1. Obscurus and Ancient Magic Brain Storage. I solemnly swear that I will take good care of it. Where is this? Vizette looked around. The scene was completely unfamiliar. Hadn't he been in the middle of a last cram session before an exam? How had he ended up here? Rubble and debris littered the floor. The ceiling and walls were ripped open by huge gashes. The fireplace nearby lay partly collapsed, ash still drifting through the air. This was no dorm room. This place was a ruin. An inexplicable tide of memory surged through him. The original host had been an experimental subject of a dark wizard, forced to endure horrific dark arts experiments. He suffered unthinkable pain and developed an immense fear of magic. In response, a powerful dark arts force, an Obscurus, had formed inside him. That was the dark wizard's aim, to cultivate a controllable Obscurus. They had forgotten the obvious truth about playing with fire. The Obscurus erupted without warning, destroying the building and shredding the dark wizard. When the memories finished downloading into his head, one conclusion was unavoidable. He had transmigrated. He was in the magical world of Harry Potter. Unfortunately, his knowledge of that world was superficial. He recognized a few names: Luna, Harry, Ron, Hermione, Lord Voldemort, Dumbledore, and had seen snippets of them in fan videos. The only film he'd actually watched was the spin-off Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. He remembered more about Newt Scamander's trip to New York, Credence, and Grindelwald than he did about Hogwarts. In that film, an Obscurus was shown as a black, ash-like mist, powerful, volatile, and uncontrollable. Was that what he had become? He barely had time to wonder. His body grew restless, and a plume of black mist leapt from him, blasting through the wall and kicking up a storm of dust. The power felt overwhelming. A violent rage rose in his mind, an urge to destroy everything. That was the Obscurus for you. Those who housed an Obscurus, Obscurials, lost control, driven by an elemental hunger for destruction. Their lives were short. Aside from Credence in the films, almost no Obscurial had survived past childhood. The original host had been altered by experiments and then shaped by the Dark Wizard, which had allowed him to survive until 11. Vizette could feel the Obscurus gnawing at his mind. If it seized him entirely, he might become the fastest dying transmigrator in history. There was hope, the notes left by that dark wizard. Every method to restrain an Obscurus had come from a single notebook. Vizette needed that notebook, now. He floated in the dust-strewn air, scanning the wreckage. The longer he stayed out here with the Obscurus loose, the worse it would get. He had to find and use the dark wizard's knowledge to take control. A crackling sound split the air. Vortices opened, apparition, and wizards began to appear, one after another. Of course, the eruption would have summoned help. He had only been in the ruined room moments. The wizards were already on the scene. 4 wizards materialized and froze when they saw him. Panic spread over their faces. "It's an Obscurus! Send for the Aurors! This is beyond us!" one shouted, voice tight. One vortex closed, and someone left to fetch reinforcements. The remaining 3 were visibly shaken. "Protego Maxima!" they cried in unison, and layered wards sprang into being, enclosing Vizette. "Merlin's beard! When was the last time an Obscurus showed up?" another whispered. "Do we just wait?" a third asked. "Or should we do something?" "Don't be rash," the first snapped. "Contain it. Hold tight for the Aurors. If we attack alone, we'll risk more harm." Their plan was clear enough. Trap him until there were enough people to execute an elimination. They didn't care whether the Obscurial could be saved. Vizette tried to speak, but all that came out was a whistling like wind through a pipe. If he used the Obscurus to break free, the notebook, if it even survived that blast, would be destroyed, and the Obscurus would devour him faster. There was only one option: find the notebook and prove he wasn't a threat. He searched desperately. Finally, an old cowhide-bound notebook caught his eye. Above it hovered a silver-blue spiral, a tiny vortex that seemed to sense him. As his gaze met it, the vortex detached and flew toward him. The notebook crumbled into dust the moment the vortex rose. Before he could react, the spiral dove into his mind. The notebook name unfurled inside his head: The Practical Guide to Wizarding Duels. Its first page opened, and a flood of knowledge poured in. Words and techniques coalesced into his consciousness. Guardian meditation, the guide instructed, enhances magical affinity, gathers uncontrollable negative emotions, collects, stores, and seals emotions. transforms them into ancient magic. Wizard understood the technique immediately and entered a meditative state. The world around him cleared, every sensation sharpened. He could perceive the Obscurus in greater detail, the way it roiled, the corrosive tug on his thoughts. His mind became a whirlpool, absorbing, purifying, and transmuting the Obscurus's chaotic energy. For a while, everything seemed to improve, and then, of course, things went wrong. More crackling vortices opened, and more wizards apparated in, forming a tightening ring. "It is definitely an Obscurus," one announced. "How has the statute of secrecy persisted if things like this keep happening?" "We don't have time for questions. Neutralize it," another shouted. Their wands were raised. Sparks and colored light gathered at the tips. Dust swirled. This was the worst possible moment. His meditation had steadied him, but he still wasn't secure, and the aurors had not yet arrived. A flash of fire split the dust, and an old man stepped through. He wore a purple robe with gold trim. Silver hair and a beard, long enough to tuck into his belt, shimmered in the sparks. Behind spectacles were bright blue eyes that took everything in at once. Every wizard there went still, astonished. "Headmaster Dumbledore?" one breathed. Why is he here?" Seeing Wizette trapped within the field of magical energy, Dumbledore looked momentarily surprised, then lifted his wand with a small, precise gesture. A firmer, more protective barrier sprang into being and completely surrounded the boy. In the midst of his meditation, Wizette could feel that the magic contained in this new field was far more powerful than before. "It seems I've arrived at an inconvenient time," Dumbledore said, glancing at the mess strewn across the floor. "The Book of Admittance showed a new student's name and address, and Minerva asked me to confirm it." "A new student's name and address?" The tall, bald wizard, Kingsley, stepped forward. "Headmaster Dumbledore, are you here about a new enrollee?" "Yes." Dumbledore nodded gently. "If the Book of Admittance is correct, then this child before me is the student in question." From Wizette's perspective, Dumbledore had come at precisely the right moment. He not only bought time for Wizette to keep absorbing the Obscurus, he also brought an astonishing piece of news. He could attend Hogwarts. In the stories he'd read, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, Hogwarts was hailed as the best school of magic. If he could study there, he ought to choose it. He could not speak yet, but if Dumbledore could stall just a bit longer, Wizette could finish drawing in the Obscurus and return to a normal appearance. Kingsley's expression was troubled. "Headmaster, if this child is enrolling now, he must be older than 10. An Obscurial is seldom expected to live past 10, another voice said, and Dumbledore's gaze swept the room, reading the worry on the wizards' faces. "But there are exceptions. I've seen more than one Obscurial older than 10. "Give us a few more minutes," Dumbledore urged quietly. "If he loses control, I will take responsibility. I will explain everything to Cornelius." With that reassurance, Kingsley had no reason to refuse. "All right. We'll repair this place within 10 minutes and then erase the Muggle's memories." "Thank you," Dumbledore said with a relieved smile. Kingsley and the other wizards set to work. Under their combined effort, the ruined house began to rewind itself. Rubble levitated and fitted back into place. The fireplace, walls, and ceiling knit themselves together until the room looked whole again. Dumbledore lingered by the magic field and, with something like curiosity in his eyes, murmured, "Such a marvelous display of power. Is he drawing it from an Obscurus?" "An 11-year-old producing anything like that. No wonder the Book of Admittance flagged an anomaly," one of them replied. Wizette paid no heed to their words. His full attention was on the Obscurus curling like a storm inside him. At last the force was absorbed, coalescing in his chest and forming a black and red core bound with silver-blue chains that pulsed like a beating heart. He reached out with shaking hands and grasped it. In that instant, the maledictus core merged back into his body. Dumbledore watched as the black mist within the field thinned and vanished. The slender boy fell from the air, hair dark and untidy, and then relaxed as if a great weight had been lifted. Dumbledore flicked his wand, and the protective fields folded away. From his shoulder, a swan-sized phoenix burst into being and settled beneath Wizette, supporting him. Wizette felt warmth and softness at his back, and a smile tugged at his lips. "It worked," he whispered, astonished. He blinked up at the suddenly restored room. "Is this magic? It's incredible." You did very well, Dumbledore said, his face kind. To free yourself from such a dangerous power, you are far more remarkable than most children I have met. Weazet's voice came out faint. Are you, Albus Dumbledore? You know my name? Dumbledore looked mildly surprised. If you know about magic's existence, why would you fear it? Weezet turned his head slightly and added, That strange man who experimented on me used to curse your name sometimes. Experimented on you? Dumbledore's eyes flashed with anger for the briefest moment. You have been through much. No wonder you fear magic. It is not your fault. He lowered his voice and spoke with careful gravity. Child, you must understand something. You are an Obscurial. What happened today could happen again. You need to learn to control the Obscurus inside you. How? Wizard asked, each word a small effort. You must come to Hogwarts to study. That is why I am here. Dumbledore's expression grew very solemn. Something stirred within him, and sealed memories opened. Memories of Ariana came rushing into his mind. No more innocent people can be harmed. This must not continue, he said, his voice steady and absolute. Under no circumstances. You must come to Hogwarts. All the upheaval since his sudden transmigration had exhausted Wizet. His eyelids grew heavy, and he could only respond with a soft, tired grunt. Dumbledore noticed and immediately softened his tone. Rest now, child. There will be no more danger tonight. The sense of security Dumbledore radiated finally overrode Wizet's panic. He tried to nod but fell quickly into a deep sleep. Dumbledore bent and gathered the boy gently into his arms. Poor child, sleep well. He took in the pale, scarred skin and the many marks of abuse. The wounds told their own story. The Hogwarts letter will have to be delivered later, he said, as if to himself. He set Wizet more comfortably and whispered, Fawkes, this child has suffered too much. The phoenix chirped, hovering in front of Wizet. Its bright eyes looked wet with tears. Pearlescent drops spilled from its lashes and ran down its shimmering feathers, falling onto the boy. Where the tears touched, wounds faded and closed, skin knitting back as if by miracle. Color returned to Wizet's cheeks, and even his lips softened into something like a smile. Kingsley and the others returned to the room, and one of them asked, surprised, Headmaster Dumbledore, has he really recovered? He's a strong, gifted child, Dumbledore said, smiling. He will need to go to St. Mungo's for treatment, and I will speak to Cornelius. Minister for Magic Cornelius Fudge returned to his office in a foul mood. Whether it was having missed a lavish French dinner that evening or the latest outrageous issue of the Quibbler, everything seemed to conspire against him. Facing Dumbledore, his tone was stiff. Headmaster Dumbledore, you've made your point. You simply want an Obscurial admitted to Hogwarts, don't you? Dumbledore's expression remained calm. Yes. His name appeared in the Book of Admittance, and tradition says enrollment should follow. Lucius Malfoy, standing nearby, sneered and let the words drawl out. That's an Obscurial who caused a major incident. As a member of the Hogwarts Board of Governors, I must remind you, Hogwarts is not your personal playground, Lucius went on. I understand, Dumbledore replied with a smile. I will ensure the child's safety. He has great talent. It should not be quashed because he is an Obscurial. Is that so? Lucius's voice turned cold. How noble of you. You can't stifle a child's talent. Would you like some sugar with your black tea? Fudge interjected, trying to ease the tension. The ministry might face protests from parents if we handle this badly. I can issue a statement and guarantee the child's safety, Dumbledore said. Is that all? Lucius raised an eyebrow. Promises, promises. Adults always seem to have to pay when they break them. Dumbledore kept smiling. If this child is harmed, I am willing to accept a ministry investigation. Aha, as loving as ever, Lucius sneered. You hid that big oaf expelled for murder years ago at Hogwarts, too. Dumbledore, do you always find dangerous people and hide them at the school? Do you really care about the other students? Are you even fit to remain headmaster? Perhaps you can call another vote, Dumbledore said lightly. Last time your reason was a fairy tale. What reason will you use now? Lucius's face tightened. The room grew colder. Fudge wiped his brow. Between the ministry's financial backers and a revered headmaster, he did not want to offend either side. He tried again. Headmaster, whether a tormented Obscurial can integrate into wizarding life is a real concern. Fine, Fudge said, seizing the chance to act decisively. Before term starts, The ministry will assess him. If he can integrate into a wizarding family, his enrollment will be approved. Very sensible, Dumbledore nodded. I can make arrangements on my end. Shouldn't the ministry handle that? Lucius interrupted, suddenly stiff. Do you think the whole wizarding world is yours to control? Or are the Quibbler's rumors true, that you are some sort of uncrowned king, an invisible power behind the ministry, ignoring Minister Fudge's authority? The accusation stung. Fudge glanced at the copy of the Quibbler on his desk and felt the magazine's mockery as a personal slap. He had spent the first year of his tenure constantly checking with Dumbledore to avoid making mistakes. Now he wanted to assert himself. He made a firm decision. Very well, the ministry will find a wizarding family. After Lucius and Dumbledore left, Fudge sat alone, chewing a sticky sweet to calm his nerves and glaring at the headline in the Quibbler. 1 year in office. When will Puppet Minister Fudge gain real power? The candy tasted like chewing on an insult. He thought of the owls he'd sent off and the endless letters to Hogwarts and felt the need to prove himself. He tore a sheet of parchment, wrote a formal appointment designating Xenophilius Lovegood as guardian for the Obscurial, folded it into a paper airplane, and sent it fluttering out of his office. Then he rubbed his stomach and slumped back into his chair. The memory of the missed bouillabaisse made him wonder when Lucius would invite him to dinner again. Vizette opened his eyes into a brightly lit hospital room. Candles floated inside crystal bubbles along the ceiling, drifting gently like slow, luminous fish. He pushed himself up on the bed and let the events before him come back into focus. He had transmigrated into this body and carried the dangerous power of an Obscurus. Wizards had nearly killed him because of it. Using the meditation method from a mysterious notebook, he had managed to contain the Obscurus and had even received an invitation from Dumbledore to enroll at Hogwarts. He meant to probe the notebook, to understand the power it contained, when he heard a soft rustling. A girl sat by the window. Her profile was delicate. A strand of light gold hair brushed her ear. Sunlight poured through the glass and haloed her face. For some reason, the world seemed to fall still when Vizette looked at her. She held her hands into the sun and let the light make shadow animals, a rabbit first, then a puppy, a duckling, a swan, a dove. She watched them with a gentle smile until she noticed him and came to his bedside. "You're awake," she said in a voice both strange and clear, like a whisper heard across water. Her eyes were crescent-shaped when she smiled. "Hello, my name is Luna Lovegood." Luna's skin was fair and her hair fluffy, waist-length and pale gold. Her faint eyebrows and silvery eyes made her look almost otherworldly. Small carrot-shaped earrings swung lightly as she moved. "Hello, I'm Vizette." He glanced around. 2 other beds were curtained off nearby, and he couldn't tell if anyone lay within. "Which hospital is this?" "St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries." Luna blinked as if remembering suddenly. "The healers have examined you. You can go home as soon as you're ready." "Go home?" Vizette felt a hollow where the word should have comforted him. "I don't have a home or family." He thought of both lives he'd lived, both beginning in orphanhood, both defined by the need to survive and study. The idea of going to Hogwarts felt more like a necessity than a dream. "Of course you have a home." Luna's smile widened into a beautiful curve. "I am your family." 4. Ancient Magic. Shieldazit had completed his discharge formalities and taken on a new identity as a member of the Lovegood family. This was the family Luna had mentioned. Luna lived in Ottery St. Catchpole, a semi-wizarding village where wizards and muggles lived together. Wizards in such places had to be careful not to use magic in front of muggles to avoid breaching the statute of secrecy. For that reason, Luna seldom went into muggle towns. Her home and garden were her whole world. She wasn't even especially sure of the details of the statute. She expected to learn more in history of magic at Hogwarts. What Luna did have, though, was a vast store of practical knowledge about the magical world, exactly what Vizette needed. Vizette listened eagerly, and in return, Luna opened up to him completely over the few days they spent together. Her house was an old black tower beside the village, cylindrical and rook-like, with a lush garden around it where all manner of strange magical plants grew. The garden was Luna's playground. She flitted about like a bright-winged insect, collecting dew, loosening soil, watering and fertilizing, delighted with every new shoot. Her companions were many, the favorite being an owl. When Vizette first moved in, Luna introduced him to the owl. "Her name is Diana," Luna said, stroking the bird's soft feathers. "She's a very good mail carrier." "Mail carriers? Do wizards really use owls to deliver letters?" Vizette asked. "Yes. For letters and packages alike, Diana will take them for you." Owls as post were common knowledge in the magical world, a small romantic tradition that fascinated Vizette. Besides Diana, the garden played host to dozens of gnomes, the little potato-like creatures with legs. The gnomes and Luna were on good terms. They would crawl out of their holes to help her dig and tend the beds. They were not as friendly with Vizette, however. One nipped his finger. Luna carefully bandaged the bite and murmured, "My dad always said the gnomes in a garden are a blessing." "If something stirs in you today, don't try to stamp it down," she added. "It could be a gift from the gnomes." Vizette, still new to the magical world and eager to trust the one who raised him here, took her at her word. He did feel something stirring. At that moment, the practical guide to wizarding duels, his little manual, flipped open in his mind to a new page. Ancient Magic, Shield. Guided by meditation and hand gestures, one could condense ancient magic power and expand it into a protective barrier. This was a wandless spell. Luna had told him that most wizards used wands and that to get a wand, he would need an acceptance letter from Hogwarts. Dumbledore had said he must study there, but half a month had passed with no letter. The idea that a book could teach him a spell that didn't need a wand thrilled him. Vizette walked down to the stream to practice. The first task was to learn the gestures. Press the palms together, form a few hand seal-like movements, then open the hands so the forefingers and thumbs met in a shape. The motions were not complex, and after a few repeats, he had them memorized. Guiding ancient magic power into and through the gestures was another matter. Each touch of his hands felt like opposing currents. His palms would push apart as if by magnets. The sequence broke down. He wondered aloud, "Is it because my power is an Obscurus? Maybe if I combine it with Guardian Meditation." He settled into Guardian Meditation. The world sharpened into clarity, and the flow of power smoothed. When he completed the final gesture, a silver-blue light condensed between his hands, a glowing ball of ancient magic power. Then, as abruptly as it had formed, the ball dissipated, and the power sank back into him. According to the guide, the next step was for the power to expand outward into a barrier. Instead, it returned to his body. The brief manifestation was nevertheless encouraging. It told him he was on the right track. He tried again and again. His movements became sure and graceful, but each time, at the last instant, when the light should have unfurled into a shield, it recoiled and retreated into him. He felt as if something essential was missing. "Practicing magic?" a soft voice asked. Diana, dozing on Luna's shoulder, opened one sleepy eye. "That looks like an old wizarding charm. May I see it?" "Of course." Vizette resumed his meditation and ran through the sequence. The light formed, then failed to spread. Luna tilted her head. "Maybe you lack a strong desire," she said. "I once read an old notebook with wizard's notes on casting. The writer said a wizard must have a desire when casting to make the magic obedient. It's like training Diana." "A notebook?" Vizette leaned forward. "Is it still around? Could I read it?" Luna shook her head, and her voice grew firmer. "It's gone. Something happened, and many of those old notebooks were lost." "Lost? Can't magic fix that? There's a reparo charm." "That was an experiment gone wrong," Luna interrupted quietly. "My mother, she was a great witch. She loved her experiments. A charm misfired." She hesitated, remembering. "I was there. The power released was terrible. My mother disappeared, and the notebooks vanished with her." Vizette had known that Luna's mother was gone, but seeing the memory harden in Luna's face made him feel abruptly small and helpless. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't know you saw that." "It's sad," Luna agreed softly. "But I have family here. I'm not without them. There will be a chance someday, won't there?" Vizette understood then why Luna had spoken of family so solemnly at St. Mungo's. "Hoo-hoo!" Diana woke with a start. The owl flapped, cried out, and the stream answered in a sudden fuss. Water splashed and churned, sending a scattering of cool spray across Vizette and Luna. 5. Rune Spore and the Admission Letter. Just as Luna reached out to soothe the owl, the nearby stream erupted, water churned, and a massive shape rose up from the depths. Thanks to the enhancement from his meditation method, the sudden disturbance barely registered with Wizette. He felt the creature lash its tail toward them. Fear didn't cloud his judgment. Wizette grabbed Luna's arm, and they dove forward together, narrowly missing the strike. The tail grazed Wizette's shoulder and buried itself in the grass. The ground shuddered as the creature pulled back, flinging up a spray of dirt and clippings. A hiss split the air as more water sloshed. The thing hauled itself onto the bank. Wizette had never seen anything like it. The snake towered at least 2 meters high and, most startling of all, had 3 heads. Its body was thick as a wagon wheel and coiled in slow, powerful loops. Reddish-orange, spiky scales covered it, but the color had a dull, grayish cast that made the beast look ancient. From the rightmost head, a pair of eerie green fangs glowed. The 3-headed snake lunged again. The right head snapped forward, gaping and baring its fangs. The 2 other heads held it back, though, constraining its motion just enough that Wizette and Luna could scramble aside. The bitten spot plunged into the grass, throwing up another cloud of dust and greenery. "Wizette, that's a rune spore," Luna said, surprisingly calm. "It might be old and slow. Its heads don't always agree. Each has its own mind." At that, the middle head blinked and hissed in a way that sounded almost like words. The left head flicked its tongue and shook its head as if scolding the others. The 3 heads scowled at one another, then, to Wizette's astonishment, began to quarrel and snap at each other. Just as Luna had said, the runespore was fighting itself. An XXXX-level magical beast. Why is it here? Luna scrambled up. Her voice tightened when she saw blood seeping from Wizette's shoulder. She hauled him to his feet and started toward home. The runespore seemed to realize its prey was getting away. It stopped its internal squabble and surged after them with terrifying speed. So fast, Wizette's meditation sense compared it to a motorcycle at full throttle. It would reach them again in seconds. Wizette's mind raced for a countermeasure. Luna shoved him ahead and, with a fierce look he'd never seen before, declared, "Wizette, you're hurt. I'll distract it." He was stunned. In his previous life, no one had ever put themselves between danger and him like that. Everything around him seemed to slow. The 3 heads were closing on Luna. Her pale gold hair streamed in the wind. There was no panic in her face, only resolve. Wizette understood, suddenly and fully, why she would do this. Once, Luna had lost her family and had nothing. Now, she would not let history repeat itself. She would not lose this family again, not for him. He felt the same way. He had finally found a family and would not let them be harmed while protecting him. Memories of the ancient shield magic surfaced, every detail strikingly clear. He had the confidence now to attempt it. Desire burned hot inside him. Luna must not be injured. He clasped his hands and channeled ancient magic from the Obscurus, forcing power upward through his body. The runespore's fangs were nearly at Luna's throat. He moved his hands in the practiced gestures. Power gathered into a ball of light between his palms, and this time, the light did not collapse back into him. Silver-blue radiance washed over Luna and burst outward, forming a shimmering spherical barrier around her. When the runespore's fangs struck the barrier, they shattered into a spray of glittering fragments. Wizette spread his fingers and the shield pushed outward, driving the runespore backward until it toppled into the stream. It hissed and rose again, 3 heads rearing in unison. This was Wizette's first time casting a shield, yet the barrier was vast. To maintain it, he had to keep drawing power from the Obscurus. The force inside him stirred, and the chains that bound it rattled as though they might break. The shield was defensive only, no damage to the runespore, so the beast kept coming. Then, out of the distance, a tabby cat streaked toward them. Mid-leap, it shimmered and shifted into human form. An older witch in a dark green robe, spectacles perched on her nose and a wand in her hand. She pointed and flicked. Water around the runespore twisted and hardened into bands of iron that rose up into a cage, trapping the enraged snake. "Merlin's beard! You two are all right! Episky!" she cried, hurrying to them. A warm green light touched Wizette's shoulder. The sting vanished, and the cut sealed as if it had never been. He grabbed Luna's hand and pushed himself up. "Is that magic?" he asked, breathless. "Yes," the witch said, pursing her lips but smiling faintly. Her tone was brisk but not unkind. "You'll learn spells like that at Hogwarts. You were lucky. If you'd been bitten by a runespore, you'd be heading to St. Mungo's. Thank you, Wizette kept saying. Madam, what is your name? The witch's smile softened. Forgive me, I should have introduced myself. Minerva McGonagall, Professor of Transfiguration at Hogwarts. She reached into her robe and produced a parchment envelope, the flap sealed with wax bearing a crest. Wizette took it with both hands. In the center of the seal was a capital H surrounded by a lion, an eagle, a badger, and a snake. I recognize you now. Wizette tore open the envelope and found the admission notice with his name on it. Having just experienced the wonder of magic, his heart swelled with irrepressible excitement. He had been waiting eagerly for this moment. Tucked with the notice was another thick parchment listing the books and supplies required for enrollment. There was no tuition fee at Hogwarts. Students only had to buy the items on the list. Having grown up in an orphanage in his previous life, Wizette was especially sensitive about money. He'd become cautious whenever money was involved. Still, a more pressing question crowded his mind. Professor McGonagall, he asked, Luna's admission notice, wasn't it supposed to be delivered by you? She's not old enough yet, McGonagall explained. She won't be able to start at Hogwarts until next year. Wizette turned to Luna. Then why did you make me call you Big Sister? Luna grinned, playful. I've always wanted a little brother to dote on. I was just doing my sisterly duty. McGonagall tapped her wand against the steel cage and it rose into the air, swaying as it floated to her side. I need to investigate why a snake like this was here. Investigate? Wizette's mind jumped. Professor McGonagall, are you saying this was a deliberate attack? McGonagall sighed softly. Wizette, you're an Obscurial. Other wizards will view you differently. You should understand that. Now that you mention it, I do, Wizette admitted. Thoughts crowded him. They see me as an anomaly and instinctively want to reject me. To them, I must look like a bomb that could go off at any moment. If I were a parent, I'd be thinking about my child's safety, too. You understand perfectly. McGonagall adjusted her spectacles. Surprise and admiration shone in her eyes. Headmaster Dumbledore and I both have every confidence in you. You're clearly a child of exceptional talent, and we both look forward to your time at Hogwarts. Don't worry about the rest. We will handle it. Oh, right. She glanced at the parchment again. A letter will be sent here shortly, and someone will come to take you to Diagon Alley to buy the items on that list. With that, she and the floating cage vanished into the emerald vortex. That evening, as Wizette was about to mend his torn clothes, there was a light knock on the door. Come in. Xenophilius Lovegood stepped inside. A disheveled, middle-aged man with long, pale blonde hair hanging to his shoulders and deep, dark circles shadowing his eyes. He looked perpetually a little dazed. He pulled over a chair and sat opposite Wizette. This might be our first proper face-to-face conversation, he said, eyeing the needle and thread in Wizette's hands. Are you sewing? My clothes ripped, Wizette said, setting the needle down. It was, as Xenophilius had said, their first real conversation. Xenophilius was editor-in-chief of the Quibbler and usually worked on the second floor, while also trying, as best he could, to cook 3 meals a day and tell Luna bedtime stories. He rarely had time to be more than a fixture in the house. Luna told me everything. Xenophilius's expression turned serious. You protected her. I need to thank you. She protected me, Wizette corrected. She pushed me away first, and Professor McGonagall was the one who ultimately saved us. Hearing himself put it so plainly, Xenophilius looked unexpectedly solemn. No, I'm not denying any of that, he said, shaking his head. Because of my work, I can't spend all the time I want with her. Most days she's playing by herself. Besides reading the Quibbler, she waters the garden. But since you came, she smiles more, and the fish she catches are even bigger. Wizette smiled. I've learned a lot from Luna. All in all, Xenophilius stood and laid his hand on Wizette's shoulder in an oddly formal gesture, like a knighting. Although I still don't understand why the ministry put you in my house, I approve of you now. Wizette felt amused and a little bewildered, but he also felt warmth. Today, the Lovegoods and he had reached a genuine mutual acceptance. Late that night, the hearth in the headmaster's office crackled, and the flames burned a peculiar emerald green. Minerva McGonagall stepped out of the fire. Albus Dumbledore set down the documents he had been studying and rose. Minerva, back so late, did something unexpected happen? There was trouble. McGonagall adjusted her glasses. When I went to deliver the admission notice, I encountered a rune spore. Dumbledore's brow furrowed. A rune spore? Is Wizard all right? He's fine, McGonagall said. I've asked Kingsley to investigate. I expect we'll have answers soon. The rune spore was very old. By the time I brought it to Kingsley, it had no vital signs. Whoever can raise a rune spore isn't likely to be ordinary. I suspect whoever released it hoped to provoke the Obscurus into lashing out so the child would be blamed. As I feared, Dumbledore sighed. Still, I should think Wizard must have done something unexpected. He did, McGonagall said with a faint smile. Wizard is a very gifted child. Not only was he not overwhelmed by the rune spore, but he also protected Luna Lovegood. Luna Lovegood? Dumbledore's interest sharpened. This complicates matters. He opened a cabinet and produced an ancient stone basin, the Pensieve. Its rim was carved with countless runes, and it contained a silvery, smoky liquid that shimmered and distracted the eye. McGonagall drew her wand, touched its tip to her temple, and drew out a slender, shimmering memory thread. She released it into the Pensieve and watched it dissolve. Dumbledore leaned over the basin and sank into the memory. When he withdrew and replaced the Pensieve, his fingers were steepled and his face was alive with emotion. Wandless magic, he murmured. No, older still. A form of casting that dates back to before wands were common. It's remarkable. I sensed a very pure, protective obsession in the shield magic, McGonagall said. Did he learn it himself? Perhaps he had guidance, Dumbledore replied with a small smile. Cornelius Fudge stumbled on the idea of placing him with a particular wizarding family. He actually found a most suitable place for Wizard. McGonagall gave a faint, bemused nod. If it's a question of nurturing imagination, the Quibbler can be unexpectedly helpful. Dumbledore's smile widened. Minerva, which house do you think Wizard will be sorted into? 7. Hagrid and the Night Bus. Gryffindor. McGonagall said without hesitation. I see extraordinary courage in him. As head of Gryffindor, I naturally hope he will be sorted there. I agree. Dumbledore nodded, and the two of them reached a quick consensus. However, he changed tack. He might also be suited to Ravenclaw. The calmness he showed when faced with a rune spore is very much in line with Ravenclaw's qualities. That's true, McGonagall nodded thoughtfully. I think the Sorting Hat will have a hard time with Wizard. Hat stalled, Dumbledore chuckled, stroking his beard. I remember it hesitated a long while between Gryffindor and Ravenclaw when it sorted you. School starts in less than 2 months. McGonagall's voice brimmed with anticipation. Harry Potter will be starting this year too, won't he? Almost. Dumbledore picked up a parchment and smiled. Harry's birthday is at the end of July. I'll arrange for someone to send his letter then. How time flies, McGonagall sighed. Have you found a suitable candidate for Defense Against the Dark Arts? That's not easy either, Dumbledore sighed softly. Fortunately, Quirinus sent me a transfer request. A transfer request? McGonagall adjusted her glasses. He used to teach Muggle studies. Moving to Defense Against the Dark Arts, won't that be a lot to ask of him? If he's willing to try, he should be given the chance. Dumbledore dipped his quill and made a note. I'll interview him in a few days. After Wizard was taken in by Luna's family, he discovered their finances were worse than he'd expected. Xenophilius, depending on the modest sales of the Quibbler, barely managed to support himself and Luna. Wizard's arrival only stretched things thinner. Xenophilius searched the house and found only a few loose coins, sickles, and nuts. Fortunately, Hogwarts provided a scholarship. Wizard received 30 galleons for school supplies. Galleons, sickles, and nuts were wizarding currency, necessary for buying all kinds of magical items. Early one morning, when the sun had barely risen, Wizard had already washed and come downstairs to wait. A shopping street for wizards, Diagon Alley, was waiting, and the thought thrilled him. Luna had also gotten up, clutching a small gnome sculpture that served as her piggy bank. You should take this with you, she said, offering it. I know you might not have enough for everything on your list. Wizette looked into Luna's pale, silvery eyes and hesitated. Losing her mother had made Luna unusually mature for her age, far more perceptive than Xenophilius sometimes gave her credit for. I applied for a scholarship, Wizette said. I'll go to Diagon Alley today to get the money. He smiled. I heard it's very interesting. Is there anything you'd like as a gift? I lack nothing, Luna answered quietly, smiling back and shaking her head. A loud series of knocks on the door broke the morning calm. Standing in the doorway was a giant of a man, more than 3 meters tall, wrapped in a fur cloak with pockets sewn on. His beard and hair were thick, and his dark, shiny eyes gleamed like beetles. "You're Vizette, aren't you?" His big beard trembled as he spoke, and his voice was gentle. "I'm Hagrid, gamekeeper at Hogwarts. I'm here to take you to Diagon Alley. I think it said that in the letter." "Hello, Mr. Hagrid," Vizette said. "I didn't expect you so early." "Mr. Hagrid." Luna rubbed her eyes and hurried over. "Please come in." This was the wizarding world. As Hagrid stepped through, the doorway expanded and lengthened to accommodate him. "Want some biscuits?" Luna offered a box of pastries, familiarly matter-of-fact. "I'll go wake Dad." "No need." Hagrid waved his hand so briskly a gust of wind nearly knocked Luna over. "I'm here to take Mr. Vizette to Diagon Alley. There's a lot to buy as a first year. We must hurry." Luna looked down. "Is there a flu network here?" "No." Luna shook her head. "Dad says he doesn't need one, so he never had the ministry install it." The truth, of course, was that a flu connection would have been expensive. Xenophilius couldn't afford it. "Then there's no other way." Hagrid shook his head. "Good thing I came early. There's still time to get to Diagon Alley another way." "Take the biscuits with you," Luna insisted, stuffing the pastries into Vizette's arms. "You haven't had breakfast yet." Hagrid tucked the box away, lifted an umbrella, and set off down a dirt path. Vizette noticed Hagrid holding the umbrella high and asked, tentatively, "Are we waiting for a bus?" "That's right. That's why Hagrid began. Before he finished, a 3-story purple bus screeched into view and came to a shuddering halt beside them. "Welcome aboard the night bus," called a weary voice. "I am your conductor. Stick out your wand and step aboard. Wherever you want to go, we'll take you." The conductor was an old man with drooping eyelids and a jaded air, as if life hadn't much to offer him anymore. The bus's door widened like the front door had, roomy enough for Hagrid to duck inside. Vizette felt as if he'd stepped into an old, dim dormitory. There were no upright seats, only 6 brass-framed beds and small candles flickering on either side. "Where are you going?" the conductor asked in a tired voice. "London. Diagon Alley." Hagrid settled onto a bed, and it groaned as if it might collapse. "That'll be 34 sickles, or 2 galleons if you prefer." The conductor brightened a fraction as he extended his hand. The wizarding currency conversion could be confusing. 1 galleon equaled 17 sickles, or 493 nuts. Hagrid reached into a pocket and pulled out 2 gold coins, passing them to the conductor. Vizette sat on the bed opposite. "I'll pay you the fare when we get to Diagon Alley," he said. Hagrid covered his mouth with his hand. His voice came out muffled. "Remember to hold the railing. This bus is going to be very bumpy. We can talk more once we're off. It's about to leave." Before he could finish, the night bus shot forward like an arrow loosed from a bow. Vizette grabbed the railing to steady himself against the sudden surge. Hagrid made a small gagging sound and closed his eyes, motion sickness already showing in his shiny eyes. Vizette fared better. Curiosity kept him steady, and he peered through the narrow, warped windshield at the world rushing by. Chapter 8. Welcome to Diagon Alley. The scenery outside the night bus's windshield rushed by in a blur, alternating between fields, rivers, ponds, and villages. Thanks to magic, obstacles like trash cans, lampposts, and mailboxes leapt aside as the bus barreled past. About 20 minutes later, it finally slowed and squeezed into a narrow alley. A wide, purple bus folding down to the size of a wooden crate and parking in a narrow lane. Only in the wizarding world could such things happen. Hagrid climbed off, swaying and clutching the alley wall as he retched. Beyond them lay a commercial street lined with signs and shops, but they had arrived early. The storefronts were closed, and only a few pedestrians hurried along the pavement. "This is too much," Hagrid muttered, still unsteady. "Vizette, can you help me find the leaky cauldron?" They passed fast food places, clothing stores, jewelers, and a cinema, but no pub. It wasn't until they went by a dusty old bookstore that a sign materialized as if from nowhere. The sign looked ancient, all smoke and scorch marks around a pattern of a black cauldron with a broken bottom. "Hagrid, is that it?" Vizette asked, pointing. Hagrid retched again, then nodded. "That's the one. You'll never guess when this place was first opened." When? Wizet's curiosity about everything in the magical world had him leaning forward. Hagrid frowned, thinking, "Early 16th century, I reckon. In any case, it predates the statute of secrecy. Come on." 400 years hadn't made the leaky cauldron fancier. If anything, it had only left grime and soot on its walls and floors. Hagrid seemed to be a regular. No sooner had they stepped inside than the whole room erupted into a friendly clamor, customers calling greetings and waving at him. Where the street outside had been empty and bright, the dim pub was lively and warm. "Still the same as ever?" called a bald man from behind the bar. He brought out 2 beer mugs and tapped them together, producing a satisfying clink. Hagrid thumped his chest and waved his free hand. "Tom, not today. I've got important business. Get me a travel sickness potion, quick. Wizette, what'll you have?" Wizette, remembering Luna's family and their money troubles, raised a pastry he'd been given. "No thanks. Luna gave me this." The pub fell quiet in an instant. Awkward, guarded looks rippled through the room. Tom took a step back and asked in a low voice, "Is he Wizette, the Obscurus?" Hagrid slapped his forehead with a loud thunk. "His fault. He's a good kid. Why'd you all look like that?" He grinned, trying to smooth things over. Tom reddened. "Sorry, I overreacted." "All right, let's go." Hagrid dropped a silver coin on the bar, downed his potion, and steered Wizette out through the pub to a small back courtyard. The patio was cleaner than the interior of the pub, with only a few tufts of weeds and a trash can in one corner. "Wizette, remember this," Hagrid said, lifting the umbrella he always carried. "Count 3 up from the trash can, then 2 across." He tapped the umbrella against the brick wall. The sound was crisp. The wall shivered, and the bricks slid and reassembled until a wide archway stood open. "Welcome to Diagon Alley." Morning sunlight poured into Diagon Alley, soft and warm, illuminating a row of colorful shop signs. Wizards bustled about, and every window displayed curious items that made Wizette feel like he'd wandered into a fair from another life. Hagrid pointed to an imposing white marble building. "That's Gringotts Bank. We need to withdraw your scholarship." A tall, gleaming white bank towered over the other shops. Wizette glanced at the doorman and frowned. "Hagrid, is that doorman a goblin?" "That's right," Hagrid said with a smile. "Goblin-made currency can't be counterfeited, which is why Gringotts is run by them." The bank's interior was grand. The outermost bronze doors were open, revealing a pair of shining silver doors inside. As Wizette and Hagrid approached, a goblin stationed at the entrance bowed and gestured them in. The silver doors were engraved with a warning in long, curling letters. "Enter, stranger, but be warned. Thieves, be advised. Seek not treasure, but retribution." The words reminded Wizette of the old tales about Tutankhamun's tomb and its supposed curse. He felt a chill of curiosity. "Hagrid, what happens if a thief tries to break in? What would goblins do?" Hagrid dropped his voice and drew Wizette a few steps further into the hall. "There are so many ways," he said. "Aside from Hogwarts, this is one of the safest places in the wizarding world. If someone fiddles with the doors, they can be sucked in and never get back out. Down in the vaults, goblins have trained trolls and dragons to guard the deepest ones." "Dragons?" Wizette's eyes widened. "There are dragons here, too?" "Of course. You can own dragons legally here." "Isn't that brilliant?" Hagrid's face lit up. "I'd love to raise one. Those little darlings are just adorable." Hagrid could talk about dragons for hours and describe the temperaments of different breeds with the enthusiasm of someone who'd read every book on them. Wizette, picturing creatures at least 5 meters long, struggled to reconcile that with little darlings. They made their way to the deepest part of the hall. Hagrid handed an application across the counter to a reception goblin. The goblin extended a long, bony finger. From under the nail, a tiny wisp of flame leapt out and touched the paper. The sheet burned, leaving no ash, only a graceful calligraphic signature that floated in the air for a moment before fading. "Please wait," the goblin said. After checking the details, he slipped down off the counter and vanished into the shadows. Wizette asked, "Hagrid, if I have muggle money, can I exchange it for wizarding currency?" "Of course," Hagrid said, rummaging through his pockets. "But there are limits. Underage wizards can only exchange 50 galleons a year. Adults can exchange 100. "Why so little?" "Because muggle currency's too easy to get and their banks aren't always safe. We have to limit it, or it would affect the wizarding economy." Hagrid's hand suddenly shot out, laughing. Finally found them. He held out more than a dozen hand-sized eggs, speckled with orange-red rings and patterns. Vizette stared at the familiar shells and felt his pulse quicken. Could these be runespore eggs? 9. Huge sum of money. You know so much. Not many young wizards recognize this nowadays. Hagrid's eyes lit up. It's a runespore egg. Do you remember what happened last time? That little darling was a hen. That's why she was so big. Professor McGonagall told me these are all compensation for you, Vizette said. Anyway, don't worry. No one will attack you again. Hagrid rambled on. Of all known fantastic beasts, only the runespore lays eggs from its mouth. Besides that oddity, its eggs were prized as potion ingredients. They sharpened the mind when brewed into the right draught. Wizards coveted potions that improved intellect, and a brutal hunt had nearly driven the runespore to extinction. Eventually, the wizarding world realized its mistake and created protected habitats in the creature's native Burkina Faso, which let them recover. The trade in runespore eggs persisted, though mostly on the black market. Vizette remembered the snake he had seen. It had looked ancient, so he wondered why Hagrid had called it a little darling or a hen. Hagrid, however, was delighted. Excellent quality, very fresh. At current market rates, these 20 eggs, I can offer 300 galleons, the potion master in the dim back of the shop said, folding up his magnifying glass and speaking low. 300 galleons? Vizette felt a jolt. That was a lot. He had walked Diagon Alley enough to have a basic feel for wizarding prices. Converted to his old life's currency, 300 galleons could be tens of thousands of yuan, enough, with careful budgeting, to leave the orphanage and live on his own for a year. Don't think it's too little, the potion master added as if this were routine. We also need to spend a good deal processing these properly. Hagrid, carrying a cauldron, came over. We have Mr. Scamander's authentication. These aren't black market goods. Can I see the authentication? The potion master asked. He lit the tip of his wand to read the seal rather than casting a lumos on the envelope. Of course. Hagrid set down the cauldron and produced an envelope. The potion master examined it carefully. After nodding, he reached into a drawer and handed over a small, finely embroidered money bag. No problem. 500 galleons. Who's going to keep it safe? Not so fast. Hagrid shook his head. You help us prepare what the new student needs and deduct the cost from that. New student? The potion master paused, then pointed his wand toward Vizette. You are Vizette, the Obscurial? That's me. Vizette noticed the man's face blanch, the color draining so it matched the faint wand light. Vizette pulled a small trolley. Besides the cauldron with scales and vials hidden inside, he had school robes and stationery lashed down. A familiar figure flashed past and went into Florian Fortescue's ice cream parlor nearby. Hagrid, have you seen Headmaster Dumbledore? Vizette called. No. Hagrid looked around. Are you still thinking about what happened earlier? Hagrid's voice softened. Vizette, don't mind their stares. You're a good kid. I don't mind. Vizette shook his head. I know the danger an Obscurus can be. I just didn't expect everyone to know I'm an Obscurial. It's all because of the Daily Prophet. They report on these things every day. Hagrid's temper flared. That Rita Skeeter, she loves to spin rumors and make things worse. The Daily Prophet? Rita Skeeter? Vizette was curious. Hagrid explained, the Prophet was the most influential newspaper in the British wizarding world, and Rita Skeeter a particularly malicious gossip. Actually, you shouldn't read it, Hagrid said, eyes narrowed. That woman's words are poisonous. They walked into Flourish and Blots, an ocean of books. Shelves rose to the ceiling, packed with every sort of volume imaginable. Floorboard-sized hardcovers, pocket reads, living books with letters that jumped and spines that fidgeted as if eager to escape. Two shop assistants continually waved their wands to keep the restless volumes calm. At home, Vizette had only been allowed the Quibbler. The rest of Luna's family's books were gone after her mother's accident. It was still early, so the shop wasn't crowded. Vizette noticed the Daily Prophet in the periodicals rack and glanced at the headline, Obscurial, Vizette repels XXXXX level fantastic beast. What is he hiding? What is Dumbledore really planning? He scanned the article and finally understood why people had reacted with such alarm. The Prophet painted him as a born dark wizard, a walking powder keg, using sensational adjectives to frighten readers. Hagrid exploded with anger. Galloping Gorgons. Rita Skeeter is too terrifying. The headmaster sealed that off. How did she find out so much? Hey, I'm here. A wizard in a black robe appeared at the entrance, bowing slightly. Wizard, I still have some things to do. Upon hearing the voice, Hagrid brightened and called out loud enough to echo. Then you go on ahead. I'll be right back. How do I find you later? Wizard asked. If you don't see me, go to Ollivander's first. Getting fitted for a wand takes a long time. Hagrid hurried off toward the wizard in the black robe. Wizard, drawn by the books, leaned the trolley against a cauldron and picked up a copy of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. The volume was full of animated hand-drawn illustrations that showed the habits and habitats of fantastic creatures. He lost himself in it and, without noticing, finished the entire book. Hagrid still hasn't come back. Wizard looked around. Then something odd happened in his mind. A book appeared in his mental space next to a guide called The Practical Guide to Wizarding Duels. It was another copy of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Wizard pushed his consciousness into it and opened the newly manifested book. The content was exactly the same as the one he had just read. He was thrilled and, almost automatically, opened another title that materialized in his mind. Preventing Incursions, a rough guide to protective magic. Wizard's expression changed. He realized he didn't have to study every sentence in painstaking detail. By flipping through these books, he could imprint their contents in his mind. 10. The boss was attracted by the book. Vizette had grown up in an orphanage in his previous life and never lost that underlying insecurity. The simplest way to feel secure was to fatten his purse. Even with 500 galleons in his pocket, he still had to think about the future, increasing income when possible and cutting costs immediately. He hadn't found a way to raise his income yet, but reducing expenses was something he could do right away. In the wizarding world, books were expensive, hardly any cost less than a galleon. With only his scholarship, buying all the required textbooks would eat up nearly half of it. He checked the list and found every textbook he'd need for school, then sank into the sea of volumes, nibbling on a couple of biscuits when hunger hit. A clerk had been watching him for a long time, irritation barely hidden. She'd seen too many people who only came to browse and treat the shop like a free library, and she'd developed a knack for sizing up customers. This boy was different. He carried a cauldron and was handling first-year Hogwarts textbooks, clearly an incoming student. Incoming students were usually sensitive about spending. His worn clothes meant he wasn't a flashy pure blood from a powerful family. His careful handling of the books suggested he was simply enjoying the feel of new pages rather than planning to buy, and anyone who planned to buy used books would go to a cheaper shop. All of that made the clerk impatient. She stepped closer. "Sir," she said, "you've been here a long while. Would you like a cup of black tea?" Wizard blinked. "Black tea? How much?" In his previous life, bookstores often had tiny cafes with drinks and desserts. The clerk's impatience burst out. "Then go next door. There's an ice cream parlor. Sit there." "Wait." She suddenly widened her eyes and broke into a cold sweat. "Are you that obscurial?" Wizard had grown used to startled reactions. He put the book back on the shelf. "Excuse me, I'll leave now." He'd already made a mental list that exceeded his goal for the day. Since the clerk wanted him gone, there was no reason to linger. Hagrid hadn't arrived yet, so Wizard planned to go to Ollivander's wand shop first to get his wand. "Don't go," the clerk blurted, waving her hands. "You continue. I didn't say anything just now. You continue." A well-dressed, elegant man stepped between them. "What's going on?" he asked. The clerk wiped her forehead. "Sir, he's been here all morning. I suggested he go to the ice cream parlor next door." "Is that so?" the man murmured. He turned to Wizard. "Why don't you come upstairs and sit for a bit?" Wizard followed, still puzzled. As he climbed to the second floor, the noise of the shop below fell away, and a peaceful hush wrapped around him. Clearly some charm had been used to give the upper floor a different atmosphere. The room was arranged with an old-world elegance. The furnishings looked antique and dignified. Wizard couldn't help smiling. "This is a wonderful place to read." "Thank you." The owner gestured toward a seat. "Would you like something to drink? Black tea, perhaps?" Wizard flushed slightly and nodded. "Yes, please." The owner introduced himself. I'm Clothar Bathat, owner of Flourish and Blots. May I have your name? Wizette, he gave a small bow. Bathat's expression softened. My clerk's income depends on sales, and sometimes they overreact. Please forgive them. Wizette still felt uneasy at how friendly the owner was. I understand, he said, and honestly, the clerk wasn't entirely wrong. She did ask if I wanted black tea. Bathat sipped the tea and asked casually, Did you actually think there was a tea house here? I did, Wizette admitted. In my previous life, bookstores often had a small cafe. If you set up a proper service area on this floor, it could change how people see a bookshop. Bathat's interest sharpened. He waved his wand and produced quill and parchment, poised to write. Wizette let the ideas he'd carried from his past life spill out. The second floor's atmosphere made it perfect for book clubs. If clerks were trained to offer proper service, the shop's reputation would rise. Even customers who didn't buy books would likely order tea or desserts, and the combination of attentive service and an elegant ambience would define the bookstore's character. That's brilliant, Bathat said, a bright smile spreading across his face. This is my family's business. I've wanted to give it a distinct personality, but I've been stuck for a good while. Your idea. This could be the path forward. It's exactly what I needed. Wizette waved his hands away. I'm glad I could help. I've been reading here all morning, after all. Bathat insisted on thanking him. He not only promised to take care of Wizette's future textbooks, but also reserved a private seat for him on the second floor. Whenever Wizette came to Flourish and Blots to read, tea and dessert would be provided at no charge. Then Bathat walked him out and pointed to a small, aging storefront next door. Wizette, that's Ollivander's wand shop. Be sure to visit. If I can, Wizette said, nodding repeatedly. Thank you for bringing me here. Bathat didn't return to the bookshop. He went into Florian Fortescue's ice cream parlor next door and hurried to the back. A silver-haired old man sat there, surrounded by lemon sherbets and sweets. It was Albus Dumbledore, picking at the desserts. Clothar, you're here. What did you make of the boy? Dumbledore asked. A very clever child, Bathat said, beaming. If it weren't for the reports, I wouldn't have seen any sign of an obscurial in him. He's mature beyond his years. Merlin's beard, I even got inspiration from him. I may record this in the family history, Bathat added. Dumbledore's voice held a hint of surprise. Oh, tell me everything. 11. Unsuitable wand. After listening to Bagshot's account, Dumbledore allowed himself a faint smile. What a fine child. Headmaster Dumbledore, Bagshot asked, is Wizette really an obscurial? From the way he speaks and behaves, I can't sense it at all. This boy has a certain charisma, Dumbledore said honestly. Even without your prompting, I wouldn't think of him as dangerous. It's remarkable. That depends on whether you believe it, Bagshot replied. You looked worried this morning, so I thought you'd ask me to keep an eye on him because you feared he might be unstable, so I tried to find a chance to talk with him. Dumbledore shook his head gently. You misunderstood. I only saw Wizette lingering in the bookstore and was worried that he didn't socialize much, that he might be too shy to buy a book if left to himself. I asked you to help look after him, to see if he needed anything, and to assist where you could. You've been a great help. I won't forget it. Oh no, Headmaster, you must be joking. Bagshot waved her hands. I'm the one who benefited. I should be thanking you. If we go on like this, Dumbledore said with a twinkle, perhaps we can decide what to eat tonight. He glanced at his watch. I have an interview this afternoon. I must go back to the Leaky Cauldron soon. All right, I should head back to the bookstore. Bagshot stood. I'll take my leave. Watching her leave, Dumbledore fell into a brief reverie. Ariana, at least this time I won't make the same mistake I made back then. For modern witches and wizards, a wand shapes nearly every aspect of life. As one of Diagon Alley's oldest shops, Ollivander's was modest to the point of being unassuming. The faded sign above the door read in flaking gilt, Ollivander, makers of fine wands, since 382 BC. The display window was hazy. An old wand rested on a dulled purple cushion. Wizette pushed open the door. Inside, the shop felt more like a warehouse than a boutique. A narrow passage led to the main room, and both sides were lined with shelves stacked with wooden boxes, floor to ceiling. The main area was small, dominated by a long, well-worn bench in the corner. The gentle clinking of wind chimes sounded, and then a figure slid into view as if carried by the breeze. Mr. Ollivander was an elderly man with silver hair and a smooth, beardless face. His most striking feature was his pale, silvery eyes, so light they seemed to glow in the dimness like two small moons. His voice was soft. "Good afternoon. Since the statute of secrecy took effect, obscurials have become rare. You are a special guest. Vizette, it's a pleasure." There was a hint of excitement in his tone. "An obscurial who can touch a wand is quite unheard of. Which hand do you usually use?" "Right," Vizette answered. "Very well. Please raise your arm and relax. I'm just taking your measurements." A measuring tape sprang from Ollivander's jacket pocket and unrolled, brushing Vizette from shoulder to fingertip, wrist to elbow, shoulder to floor, and even around his forehead. As if the shop had awakened, Ollivander moved through the aisles and, with a flick of his hand, 3 boxes flew into his arms. "Wood, core, length. Every wand is different. Of course we'll find one to suit you." He handed over a wand. "Try this. Acacia, dragon heartstring, 13 inches, sturdy." Vizette held it. Barely had he closed his fingers around the shaft, then Ollivander removed it. "Doesn't feel right. Try this. Blackthorn, snake nerve, 12.5 inches, very springy." Again, the wand barely reached Vizette's hand before it was taken away. "Holly, phoenix feather, 13 3/4 inches, medium flexibility." "Cedar, unicorn tail hair, 10 3/5 inches, no." Ollivander rattled off woods and cores, moving with an agility that belied his age. Vizette found one wand after another placed in his hand, then snatched away. Wands and boxes accumulated on the floor until small piles rose at his feet. "Ebony, dragon heartstring, 9 inches." Ollivander tried. "Elder, snake nerve, 11 inches. Laurel, phoenix feather." He muttered and scanned the shelves. Time went by, and the piles grew like a little mountain. At last, Ollivander stopped, sounding both bewildered and excited. "I can't believe it. We've tried almost everything. How can this be?" If Vizette hadn't once practiced shield magic, he might have begun to question his own aptitude for magic. Instead, he stood calm but curious as Ollivander paced and rubbed his hands. "Vizette, I need more information," the wandmaker said, slightly impatient. "Would you tell me something about your past? Try not to dwell on the bad. Tell me about happy or interesting things, preferably things that happened before you met Professor Dumbledore." "Is something wrong?" Vizette asked. "Why can't we find a wand that suits me?" "It's not unusual for a witch or wizard to be particular about wands," Ollivander said with a small smile. "The wand chooses the wizard, and sometimes finding the right match requires tracing back to a person's origins, events that shaped them. Tell me about your life before Dumbledore." Vizette frowned and sifted through memories. "Yes, interesting things. There was a book in that wizard's house that recorded magic. It was very old, and I was fascinated by it." "A book of ancient magic?" Ollivander's expression sharpened. "I have an idea. Wait here." He drew his wand and waved. The scattered wands obediently returned to their boxes and floated back to the shelves. From the deeper shadows of the shop, he reemerged, holding a slim silver-blue box. Vizette leaned in. The symbol swirling on its lid was a mirror of the mark he knew well, the same emblem that had been on the practical guide to wizarding duels. 12. Diagon Alley shines for you. Ollivander's expression was unreadable. "To be honest," he said finally, "even though it was made by the Ollivander family, it isn't a complete wand. My grandfather once told me this wand has a special purpose," Vizette replied. "Under normal circumstances, it probably can't compare to an ordinary wand." Vizette took the box and gently pulled back the lining. On silver-blue velvet lay an astonishingly delicate wand. Its handle looked like a solid sapphire. A gray crystalline structure spiraled up from the handle, bridging the sapphire to a wooden shaft. Ollivander stared at it as if it were a treasure. "This wand is very special," he murmured. "It doesn't even fit neatly into wand lore theory. It doesn't have a clearly defined shaft or core." Vizette felt something ineffable, an immediate certainty that the wand belonged with him. Perhaps, as Ollivander had suggested, it had been waiting for him since it was made. He didn't hesitate. He gripped the wand. Silver-blue light flooded his mind. The practical guide to wizarding duels sprang open. Countless pages fluttered in his head like a boiling school of fish. The wand seemed to dissolve in his hand and reappear inside his mind. The fluttering pages circled it, restless and alive. The gray crystal set into the wand brightened and emitted a silver-blue glow. The dim shop brightened. Ribbons of silver-blue light poured in from every corner and struck Wizet's eyes. For a moment, the whole of Diagon Alley shimmered just for him, bathing the street in that same silver-blue light. Ollivander stood with his mouth slightly open, watching, eyes wide as Vizette floated a little above the floor. Vizette looked out as if he stood on the river of history, watching Diagon Alley rise and change through the ages. He saw the first Ollivander ancestor come here, set up a makeshift stall and sell the very first wand. He watched goblins arrive, building a pale white edifice as if foreseeing the place's prosperity. He saw more and more shops appear, forming the bustling lane that clustered around Gringotts and Ollivander's workshop. He glimpsed the essence of magic itself, how wizards had obtained their power in recent memory and in eras even older. Vizette focused, trying to see more clearly, to trace the lines of that ancient current. A sudden, fierce dizziness swept through him, as if the world were tilting. At the far end of the leaky cauldron, Dumbledore interlaced his fingers, his sharp gaze fixed on the shadowed figure across from him. "Professor Quirrell," he asked, "I understand you went to the Albanian Dark Forest for practical experience in defense against the dark arts. Any insights?" Of course," Quirrell stammered. "I encountered vampires. They were very unwelcoming to me." A slash of silver-blue light streaked through the leaky cauldron. The patrons blinked awake from their stupor. "Did you see that? A light?" someone asked. "I saw it," another slurred. "Lumos," he declared, waving his wand. "Are you all right? Bring 2 more dozen sherries." Dumbledore's gaze drifted through the bar, past the small courtyard, and beyond to Diagon Alley. From that light, he felt the tug of ancient magic power and tried to pin down its source. "Ollivander's wand shop? Could it be Vizette?" he murmured. Quirrell blurted on, voice shaking. And an old hag, she was terrifying." "What did she do?" Dumbledore prompted softly. She kept many snakes, all poisonous snakes. She drove them to attack me." On the leaky cauldron's second floor, in the room Quirrell had rented, something else stirred. Voldemort, now inhabiting a sharp-nosed viper, woke from a fitful sleep. He felt the pull of a peculiar power. He pushed out from under whatever thin covering he had, slithered to the window, and stared into the distance. "Such ancient magic power," he rasped. His voice was a dry, grating thing. "This body is too weak to do more than sense that the source is nearby. Quirrell must obtain the Philosopher's Stone." Before he could finish, the viper on which he rested collapsed. Its scales and flesh turned to ash. A wisp of smoky, illusory black gas rose and drifted to a corner of the room where a net cage of sleeping, poisonous snakes lay. The black mist hung for a heartbeat, then chose one of the snakes and coiled into it. Vizette came to on the long bench inside Ollivander's. The shop looked different. The ceiling was threaded with countless fine lines, like dried brushstrokes, a faint wash of silver blue now painted across them. The wands on the shelves were threaded with luminous veins, some blazing red, some warm orange, others a soft silver. "Child, you're awake," Ollivander said, appearing at his side. "Did the world shift for you?" A mirror had appeared nearby and showed a delicate face still carrying the soft roundness of youth. Vizette touched his eyes. They were like moonlit lakes, silver-blue light pooled in his pupils, giving them a strange, mysterious beauty. He blinked, and the glow faded. He blinked again, and it returned on command. "Magic eye," Ollivander said with an envious note in his voice. "An exceedingly rare talent, the most prized ability in the Ollivander family." "The first generation of Ollivander wandmakers possessed the magic eye," he went on. "He could observe the magic of the world, distill its laws and mysteries, and weave those laws into the craft of wandmaking. That is the foundation of our family's technique." Vizette felt his consciousness sink inward as the practical guide to wizarding duels flipped to a new page, an entry on the magic eye. "Elementary magic eye," it read. "Discover ancient magical power as it accumulates over time. Absorb it to develop the eye. Perceive magical circuits." To perceive magical circuits meant being able to see the lines wrapped around a wand. That was only the elementary magic eye. If he continued to absorb ancient magic power and allowed the eye to grow, to reach intermediate, advanced, what more might he see? Vizette tried to sense the Obscurus, but the ancient magic produced by an Obscurus could not be absorbed by the magic eye. The Obscurus path was closed to him for now, so he didn't push it. His first priority remained obtaining a wand. "Mr. Ollivander," Vizette said, returning his attention to the present, "the wand you gave me earlier, it's gone. What should I do?" 13. Magic eye and wand making. It's all right. Maybe it will become a key to unlock the magic eye. Mr. Ollivander's voice softened, like an elder comforting a younger. "Let's start over and choose a wand. Perhaps this time, you'll gain something unexpected. What color wand do you prefer? Do you have any requirements for the core?" Vizette frowned. "Didn't you say earlier that a wizard and a wand choose each other? Can I really make requests now?" Mr. Ollivander hummed. "Usually that's how it goes, but you possess the magic eye. Tell me what style you like." Vizette thought of the wands he'd tried before. Elder wood, dragon heartstring, 13 inches, something sturdy. "You remember all that?" Mr. Ollivander beamed like a sunflower toward the sun. "To bear the power of an Obscurus, it does need an extraordinary configuration." He moved through the shop as if he knew every wand by heart. With a flick, a wooden box flew from the farthest shelf and landed in Vizette's hands. Inside lay a jet-black wand with fine carvings, straight and sharp, cold and severe as a military spike. Using his magic eye, Vizette felt the wand's craftsmanship. The magical circuitry ran smoothly through most of the shaft. The only imperfection was at the tip, where the flow bulged and knotted like a tangled ball of yarn. Vizette gripped the wand. The handle was smooth and well-contoured, fitting perfectly in his palm. Ancient magic stirred, racing through the wood. Power gathered toward the tip and pooled in the knotted circuit. It felt like a game of cat's cradle. He had to untangle that knot to restore a smooth flow. After a while, he managed to straighten it out. Swirling cyclone-like patterns appeared in the grain, and the wand grew faintly warm. Instinctively, Vizette released his hand. The wand hovered of its own accord and began to hum pleasantly. It felt as if it were calling to him, a clear contrast to the silence it had shown before. One by one, other wands across the shop began to hum too, responding. "Absolutely marvelous. It's even more perfect." Mr. Ollivander smiled in satisfaction. "Do you see now? The wand chooses the wizard. You have the magic eye. You can make a wand better than any would-be maker. No wand could refuse that." "They're fascinating things," Vizette said with a laugh. A line from a past life went through his head. "Today you overlook me. Tomorrow I'll be indispensable." Mr. Ollivander's face lit up. "Vizette, once you graduate, I hope you'll learn wand making with me." Vizette blinked. "Really? You mean I could learn to make wands here?" "Don't worry about pay. I'll compensate you at Auror's rates. I won't let you lose out." There was genuine hope in the old man's voice. "It's a profound discipline, and there are family secrets." Vizette hesitated. "You possess the magic eye. That's the most important thing," Mr. Ollivander said quickly. "Think it over. Just give me an answer before you graduate." Then, as if worried he might decline, the wandmaker slipped into the darker recesses of the shop and returned with a notebook bound in scaled leather. "Hungarian horntail hide, specially treated, keeps your hands warm even when taking notes in winter," he said, pressing it into Vizette's hands. The notebook did feel warm, like holding a small hand warmer. "Inside are basic wand-making methods and some of my own insights. Take it, glance through it when you've time." Vizette's first instinct was to refuse. Such a family secret handed out so freely felt almost suspicious. But curiosity won, and he opened the notebook. Page after page contained dense technical knowledge about wand lore, more than could be read casually. He realized he could recall the contents almost immediately. He read fast, and it lodged in his memory, if not all of its subtle meanings. "I've read it," he said, returning the notebook. "There's a lot to learn, but I've memorized it." Mr. Ollivander's eyes dimmed. "You don't have to placate me if you're not interested. Tell me honestly, do you want to learn?" Vizette tried to explain. "I do read quickly. I've memorized the content, even if I haven't fully unpacked every detail." "Oh?" The old man brightened. "Do you think Hawthorne would make a good wand wood?" Vizette mentally flipped through the pages he had just memorized. Hawthorne would make a peculiar and contradictory wand. It's niche, but its existence is justifiable. If it's on the list, there should be a suitable owner for it." Very good. Very good." Mr. Ollivander's eyes lit up again. "What about sycamore for the shaft?" As Ollivander quizzed him, Wizette found he could recite answers fluently. The wand maker praised him. Wizette, your world is absolutely boundless. It would be a waste to make you only a wand maker. The sun had fallen toward the horizon, throwing a warm orange glow over Diagon Alley. Through the magic eye, the buildings looked as if cast in stained glass. The lines that held them together were threaded with near-dry, silvery blue magic. Wizette thought, perhaps consuming the ancient magic of the alley had unlocked the magic eye. Its development would be slow and arduous, but it would grow with steady steps. He stood outside Ollivander's, turning the new wand over in his hand. He liked its design, and it meant something, a tangible beginning on the wizard's path. Mr. Ollivander had told him this particular wand was 7 galleons, a discount for new students. Wands varied in price by material, but for Wizette that was a triviality. He could always trade in later. Wands he improved also held research value for Mr. Ollivander. After a while, he slipped the wand into his pocket and looked around. Hagrid, where had he gone? They'd parted that morning, and now the sun was setting and he still hadn't returned. Hagrid wasn't the sort to leave without a word. Had something happened? Wizette walked to the potion shop and found the potion master he'd spoken with that morning. "You mean Hagrid?" the man said, frowning as he thought. "I believe I saw him go that way. Why don't you check? Oh, and just look from the street corner. Definitely don't go into Nocturne Alley. A natural-born dark wizard, an extremely dangerous person." That was me. Night had fallen, and the street lamps lining Diagon Alley were lit. The whole street had a warm, tipsy feel, as if the alley itself had been soaked in the kind of comfort you get after one too many drinks. Wizette left the potion shop and, following the potion master's directions, slipped into a darker alleyway. The light from Diagon Alley faded away. The air grew cold and damp. The brick walls leaned and warped, streaked with pale lumos moss that pulsed a ghostly green. The alley ended in a blot of blackness that made the place look like the mouth of hell. No sane person would want to go farther in. Voices echoed from the far end. A bellow from Hagrid rolled out. "Let me go! I'm not buying it! Don't touch him!" A sneering voice replied. "What are you on about? We had a deal. We brought the dog over. You don't want us to butcher it, do you?" Hagrid's voice rose, raw and furious. "Don't do that. The little one hasn't even opened his eyes yet. You hiked the price all of a sudden. I don't have that much. Give me one more day." The arrogant voice answered, "One more day. This is a hot potato. Let us search you. If you really can't raise the rest, we'll sell it at the original price." "No, I only have this much," Hagrid insisted. Wizette could tell it one was a dispute. This was not the time to play hero or watch a sideshow. He should have gone back down to Diagon Alley to fetch help. He was about to turn when a cold voice cut behind him. "Carrying a new cauldron? And an owl? Looks like a first year." A wizard in a black robe stepped out, wand held high, its tip throwing a pale light. "Kid, what are you doing here?" Wizette instinctively shaded his eyes with his hand. The black-robed wizard finished with a grin. "Lucky day for us. 2 fat fish? Come with me." Wizette's fingers closed around the small iron plate Ollivander had given him, a fist-sized talisman, a defensive charm. All it took was to rub it back and forth 3 times to trigger its shield charm. He knew the plate was valuable, but the situation was urgent. He might need it to get himself out. He followed the black-robed man deeper into the alley. At the end of the lane, he saw Hagrid, taller than everyone around, leaning against the wall, fists clenched, face furious, and 3 ragged men circling him like wolves. Each barely came up to Hagrid's waist. Behind them, sleeping heavily on the cobbles, lay a monstrous dog, a 3-headed beast the size of a small cart. It was the size and stubbornness of a pug, turned up to terrifying proportions, slumping and snoring, thick drool running from each maw. A Cerberus, a 5X creature in the books, originally from Greece, known to like sweets, its bulk and magical resilience compared to dragons. In the Fantastic Beasts listings, 5X meant the most dangerous, hardest to tame. For Hagrid to call one a little darling only underlined how fond and foolishly protective he was. "Hagrid, how did you get here?" Wizette said, more surprised than he meant to be. "You actually tried to buy it?" Hagrid's voice broke into a roar. "You've gone and stolen a young one. So you two know each other. Bad luck for him," the black-robed wizard said, pushing Wizette forward and joining the three thugs to hem Hagrid in. Wizette kept his calm. He glanced at the dog, which was so big the sleeping animal alone seemed like a threat. "Hagrid, you're buying this?" he asked. Hagrid nodded indignantly. "I brought enough money, but they're asking an absurd price. 600 galleons. One of our fellows was caught bringing it over, so of course we add a fee," the black-robed man said. "That's our family member." "That's no reason to break your word," Hagrid spat. "Break our word?" The black-robe's laugh was sharp. "Now there's an extra child who knows about this. We'll need to add more. Since there's a child, you go back and get the money. If you don't bring 1,000 galleons tomorrow, the ghost of this child will come after you," Hagrid threatened. "Ho!" The men only laughed louder. "You can't do that!" Hagrid waved his hands desperately. "You can't! Absolutely not!" Wizette felt the old, familiar twitch, a memory of orphanage life where giving ground only invited worse. When the wicked push, they need to be made afraid. If they were going to be unreasonable, they needed to know there would be consequences. "Of course we'll be fine," the four scoffed. "Go raise your money. Whether the kid lives depends on you." Wizette cleared his throat. "You haven't asked me anything. You decided everything on your own." The men sneered. "My family's waiting for me. If I go back late, they'll worry. Sorry, can't stay." They laughed at him, louder and meaner. "Did he just threaten us? I'm shaking. A first year with a cauldron, probably bought his wand today. What's he going to do, Lumos?" "Look at his clothes," another added. "Not from a rich pureblood family. Not so many galleons, then. If he was, we'd ask for 2,000. Wizette said, even-voiced. "Do you know what an obscurial is? Do you read the papers?" They grew impatient. "What's an obscurial? Shut up! Big guy, get the money!" Wizette sighed. "Hagrid, you had the Daily Prophet with you, didn't you? Do you still have it?" "Oh, yes." Hagrid dug into his tattered pockets and produced a crumpled newspaper. Wizette took it and handed it to the four men. Only the black-robed wizard unfolded it. The others kept a wary distance. The wizard's expression shifted as he scanned the page, from suspicion to surprise. He leveled his wand. Its light swept across Wizette's face. The change in him was sudden. Surprise curdled into real fear, sweat beating at his temples. "A natural dark wizard, a walking powder keg, an extremely dangerous individual," Wizette said, pointing to himself. "That's me. I'm an obscurial." The black-robed man swiped at his forehead, trying to look composed. "You say that and it's true? Maybe the reporter made a mistake. Maybe it's nonsense." "He's Wizette," Hagrid burst out. "Lots of people gave him a hard time today over this." "You need proof?" Wizette smiled and rolled up his sleeves, each movement smooth and deliberate. Chapter 15. How can you bargain like this? Ancient magic, shield, the memory of the runespore encounter flashed before Wizette's eyes. A silver-blue glow wrapped around him and Hagrid, and a spherical barrier sprang up, enclosing them both. "That reporter clearly wasn't really there," Wizette said softly, pinching his fingers together. The shield expanded outward until it stopped just short of the black-robed wizard. Wizette gave a cold laugh and called out, "I drove the runespore into a corner and crushed it bit by bit with this magic. Want to try it?" "Of course, you can try to resist," he added, voice low and dangerous. "I can still hold back my power now, but if I unleash the Obscurus, who knows what will happen?" He glanced around the alley. "This place is perfect, just one straight line. The Obscurus would do very well here." The black-robed wizard and his three companions broke into a cold sweat. "Boss, this magic, it's not that powerful, is it?" one muttered. "Come on, 4 of us can take 2 of them, right?" another protested. "Is he trying to intimidate us? Obscurial? What even is that?" Their bickering annoyed the black-robed wizard. He snapped, "Shut up. Even if the obscurial identity is fake, is wandless magic fake? How many kids do you know who can cast without a wand?" He threw a crumpled newspaper to his companions. "Read a Skeeter's article. Read it for yourselves. Don't prattle on about leaving when you don't know what you're dealing with." Regret finally showed on his face. He should have driven this obscurial away before things escalated. Now the silver-blue shield held firm, and the black-robed wizard could only grit his teeth and ask unwillingly, "What exactly do you want?" Wizette took 2 steps forward and smiled. "I just want to go home. A very simple wish." At that, the black-robed wizard and his companions scrambled back more than 10 paces, pressing their backs against the still-sleeping Cerberus pup. Between Rita Skeeter's report and the visible shielded power, they already suspected what an Obscurial was and what Vizette had done. They didn't need much convincing. And about this Cerberus, how much were you planning to sell it to Hagrid for? Vizette asked. You'd still buy it? The black-robed wizard asked, surprised. 400 galleons. It's a cub. Its eyes haven't even opened. Vizette glanced at Hagrid. Hagrid, is a Cerberus cub worth that much? His knowledge of Cerberus came from fantastic beasts and where to find them. The book warned about precautions more than prices. Hagrid nodded eagerly. Of course it's worth it. It's a bargain. I've never seen such a price, not even when I was in Greece. See? The black-robed wizard breathed, relief washing over him. We'll stick to that price. No haggling. Vizette felt a twinge of disbelief. They had the upper hand and weren't pressing it. Wizard seemed simpler than he expected. Maybe Hagrid was just simple. 400 galleons was substantial, and Vizette's thrifty instincts kicked in. That price is unreasonable. This isn't Greece, he said. The black-robed wizard immediately leaned in. What do you mean? As far as I know, Vizette said calmly, a Cerberus is dangerous and rare. Buying one is a complicated affair. Beyond the purchase price, there are procedures and permits. If you follow the proper channels, it's a lot of work. He'd read the brief section on adopting a Cerberus. The black-robed wizard tried to play dumb, shaking his head. I don't know anything about that. This is a great deal. He gave Hagrid a desperate wink. Big guy, say something. It's a cub. Don't you want it? Hagrid just snored a bit and looked at Vizette, expression saying, I'll go along with you. Vizette made a peace sign. 200 galleons. That's our highest offer. 200 galleons, the black-robed wizard shrieked. You might as well kill us. That's impossible. Vizette stroked his chin, pretending to ponder. This dark alley, it's suitable for deals like this. Hagrid, you must stay calm. You're a good lad. Hagrid sniffed, alarmed. The black-robed wizard, alarmed as well, scrubbed his hands through his hair. He's right. Calm down. Let's discuss this. Vizette kept his fingers up. 200. 390. That's our bottom line, the wizard cried. 190, Vizette countered. If you had a bottom line, you wouldn't have tried to hold me hostage. Frustration showed on their faces. The black-robed wizard begrudgingly lowered the price. 380, no lower. 170. Judging by your clothes, you've likely been roughing it. Maybe you smuggled this Cerberus from Greece. This money should keep you for a while. Besides, Hagrid is the Hogwarts gamekeeper. Only a place as large as the game reserve can keep a Cerberus happy. Isn't that worth something? The black-robed wizard seemed stung. You can't keep lowering it. Who bargains like you? 150, Vizette said, unruffled. Like I said, the bottom line can be lowered, especially with people like you. They argued back and forth for a while longer, each protest from the sellers more desperate than the last. Eventually, the tense air broke. As the moon rose high, Hagrid, grinning, hoisted the Cerberus pup and led Vizette back toward Diagon Alley. Vizette, thank you so much today, Hagrid said, almost weeping with relief. If it weren't for you, I don't think I'd have got out of Nocturne Alley. He fumbled in his smock and produced a beautifully embroidered cloth bag, looking anxious. They nearly searched me. I didn't want them to take this. That was why Hagrid had refused to be searched. Vizette had briefly entrusted his wallet to him. The runespore had come from Hagrid. If Hagrid had been selfish, Vizette wouldn't have walked away with 500 galleons. Hagrid's smock also offered resistance to common theft charms, so keeping the money on him had felt safer. Seeing Vizette retrieve his wallet, Hagrid relaxed and asked, voice soft with affection, What do you think this little darling should be called? Vizette looked at the still dozing Cerberus and shrugged. I'm not great at names, but it's Fluffy. So maybe? Cute? Hagrid's eyes lit up. Yes, Fluffy, a fluffy little darling. Fluffy. He reached out to stroke the pup's back, all doting. Fluffy, what do you think? Perhaps Hagrid's voice did the trick. The pup Fluffy grunted and slowly opened its eyes. Woof! The first face Fluffy saw wasn't Hagrid's but Vizette's, who was trailing behind, dragging a small cart. Hagrid, your Fluffy's awake, Vizette said quietly. Flu Network destination. The burrow Fluffy, the Cerberus, opened his eyes. He pawed at the ground, whining and trying to lunge toward Vizette. When Hagrid saw him stir, he easily scooped the creature up over his head. Fluffy was the size of an African lion, after all. Hagrid crowed, thrilled. Fluffy, you're awake. You're so cute, born to be kissed by Mama. Wizette wiped a bead of sweat from his brow. Only someone of Hagrid's build could lift a Cerberus that size alone. Seems I arrived at a rather inconvenient time, he said. At that moment, a familiar voice sounded, and Dumbledore appeared behind them. Headmaster Dumbledore, Hagrid blurted, startled, and tried to hide Fluffy behind him like a pressed-together present. Given Fluffy's bulk, even Hagrid, towering though he was, couldn't completely conceal him. A Cerberus pup, a bit thin, Dumbledore said with a warm smile. Is this the new den you built at the school for him? Heh? Hagrid chuckled sheepishly, a strained smile on his face. Fluffy's still young. I don't want him wandering off all the time. Of course, Dumbledore nodded, but in that case, I'm afraid he can't take the night bus. Wizette, would you like to try another way of getting home? There's a more economical option, and I've already spoken with Molly about it, Dumbledore added. More economical? Wizette remembered he hadn't paid for the morning's ride, so he hurriedly fished out a galleon and slipped it into Hagrid's trousers. Hagrid waved it away, eyes bright. You don't have to. You saved me over 200 galleons. Wizette waved his hand. That's different, one thing at a time. Just take it, Dumbledore said with an even kinder smile. Wizette, come along. The Floo network is a very good way to travel. The three of them returned to the Leaky Cauldron. The pub was loud and warm. The corner hearth glowed and made the room feel cozier. Dumbledore picked up a flower pot from the mantel. Inside sparkled a handful of starlit green powder. It's very simple, he said. Take a pinch of Floo powder, throw it into the fire, and say clearly where you wish to go. The burrow, he demonstrated, tossing a handful into the flames. The fire flared, and on contact with the powder, turned from red to emerald green. Wizette, try not to be afraid of the flames. The fireplace won't harm you. It's guided by magic and will take you home, Dumbledore soothed. Wizette nodded and pushed his small trolley straight into the green flames. Dumbledore's words calmed him. He felt a strange roaring in his ears and then a whirl of fireplaces, one exit after another flashing by. Hagrid huddled in the corner with Fluffy. Headmaster Dumbledore, he asked nervously, how are we getting back to school? I've arranged for Thestrals, Dumbledore said, but they won't arrive quickly. Just then, Tom came in, carrying a large pot of tea and a neatly cut cake covered in sweet cream. Dumbledore's face relaxed at the sight of it. I'm very curious about the Cerberus, he said, stroking his beard. Tell me how you came by him. Hagrid brightened. Of course. Where do you want me to start? How I met Fluffy. I was at the Leaky Cauldron. I mean the buying process, Dumbledore said, waving a hand. From what I heard, Wizette helped you a good deal. Yes! Hagrid nodded so vigorously his hair bounced. If it hadn't been for him, they'd have robbed me blind. Here's what happened. He launched into the story. Wizette trusted me with 500 galleons. How could I let those people search me? I was scared out of me mind when they showed up. They were too clever for me. I didn't see what they'd planned, and in the end, those blokes only sold Fluffy for 170 galleons. What kind of bargain was that? Hagrid dramatized, arms waving. Fluffy, who had been dozing, lifted his head at the name Wizette and let out a few excited barks. Dumbledore smiled with evident approval. Using a day's observation to turn the situation around, that's impressive. To think of a perfect solution in such an urgent moment, honestly, even I might not have done better. Hagrid kept nodding. I said so. If Wizette hadn't come, I wouldn't have known what to do. Dumbledore's smile deepened. Hagrid, I can tell you care very much for this creature. Fluffy likes him too. Hagrid rubbed the beast's head. But some folks don't understand. It's all those reports' fault. They'll have new things to write about soon enough, Dumbledore murmured. Harry's birthday is in a few days. I'll need your help. Harry? Hagrid's jaw dropped. Harry Potter? He's starting school then? I haven't seen him in 10 years. Exactly, Dumbledore said softly. It's been 10 years. Things are going to be busy for a long time. Thestrals have arrived. We should return to school, Dumbledore finished. The green flames did not harm Wizette. The rush of moving through the Floo network left him disoriented, and then he heard a startled child's cry ahead. Mum, the fireplace is reacting. Come look. A more mature male voice called. Wizette is coming back from Diagon Alley. He must have a lot of things. Ron, Stay back. Be careful. A shove from behind propelled Wizard out of the fireplace into a living room pieced together from crooked stones. A tall, red-haired boy stood before him, offering his hand with an air of self-importance. "Hello, I'm Percy Weasley. I'm a Gryffindor prefect," he announced. Another red-haired boy emerged, smiling shyly. "I'm Ron, and I'm starting school this year." Suddenly a hand burst in under Percy's in a grin. "Hello, I'm Fred Weasley, brother who always gets points deducted by the prefect." Another hand slapped over Percy's palm. "And I'm George Weasley, another brother who gets points deducted." "Shut up," Percy snapped. "If you behaved yourselves, who would be deducting your points?" "That's Percy for you," the twins chorused, shaking their heads with mock disappointment. "We even wonder if he's really our brother. No sense of humor at all." All four boys had freckles and shock red hair. Percy was the most formally dressed, wearing a black robe with a Gryffindor badge and round spectacles that gave him a prim look. Fred and George grinned mischievously. Their clothes were worn and singed from magical mishaps. Ron stood at the back, eyes wide with curiosity. A middle-aged woman in an apron bustled in and dragged the twins aside. "My name is Molly. You're late. Have you had anything to eat?" She bent to inspect Wizard and straightened his collar. "Shall I make you something here?" Wizard looked at the warm, bustling group. There was no aloofness or fear, only a comfortable, immediate familiarity. He smiled. "Thank you, Mrs. Weasley, but Mr. Lovegood left dinner for me." Wizard had heard Luna mention there were other wizarding families around Ottery St. Catchpole. Mrs. Weasley walked ahead, carrying a basket of vegetables. "The Diggories live nearby. Their children are much less trouble than Fred and George," she said. "And the Fawcett's are close too. I think they have a girl starting school this year. Maybe you'll meet her when term begins." She was talkative and easygoing. Speaking with her felt like an ordinary neighborly chat with no awkward distance. Since Mrs. Lovegood's accident, their family has been a little reclusive. We haven't had much contact the last few years. Luna is a good child, though her thoughts are rather scattered. Even Fred and George often can't keep up with her, Mrs. Weasley added. Wizard had been in this world less than 2 months and mostly listened, answering now and then. He smiled slightly. "A lot of things Luna says are inspiring to me. If not for Luna's protection and insight, he would never have been able to cast that shield when he met the runespore." "That's wonderful." Mrs. Weasley glanced toward the stream not far off. "I pass that way sometimes, and often see Luna staying there these last 2 years. She always cries while fishing, then runs home when she sees me. A child who hasn't yet started school, missing someone like that, she must be very unused to it, right?" Wizard felt a tug at his chest. "I don't think so," he said. Mrs. Weasley smiled. "That's lovely." Her kindness made Wizard oddly uneasy. Hogwarts was a closed campus. Aside from summer holidays, students could only leave during the Christmas break. 2 moons rose over the small hill. One hung high in the sky, the other a full moon that floated above the carriage-shaped old castle, Luna's mother's masterpiece, said to have come from a magical experiment. The darker the sky, the more the moon above the castle stood out. If viewed with a magic eye, might there be something unusual to see? Wizard's vision brightened, silver-blue light pooling in his eyes. The magic flowed like liquid over the castle, especially around that floating moon, where the glow was exceptionally vivid. It felt like ancient magic, distilled by time, and he knew he could, if he wanted, draw that power into his sight. He chose not to. At night, Luna loved to walk the highest floors and gaze at the moon over the castle, and he hesitated to disturb whatever private wonder she cherished. He wondered, though, if Luna's mother had been studying ancient magic. "This is my first time coming here at night. It's beautiful," Mrs. Weasley said, suddenly handing Wizard the basket. "I'll leave these with you. They're from our garden. Give my regards to Mr. Lovegood and Luna." Wizard blinked back to ordinary sight and accepted the basket. "Thank you, Mrs. Weasley. I don't know how to thank you enough." She slipped away into the dark, and a tiny, fluffy owl burrowed into Wizard's arms and gave a joyful trill. Nearby, a bird cage on the hearth swung slightly. A bronze-colored owl inside called out, as if greeting them. Quiet footsteps approached, and Luna peered up at Wizard, smiling faintly. "Diagon Alley is amazing, isn't it?" Her voice was light as ever. "Did you get tangled up with a blibbering humdinger? If you get to school, you can write to me." The bronze owl, Diana, puffed out her chest and gave two sharp hoots. "Yes, you can write," she seemed to say. Wizette smiled, relieved. Luna had a way of dissolving his worries. He pointed to the agitated little owl and asked, "What should we call this fellow?" "A lively little thing," Luna mused. "How about Thor? The sun and moon always take turns appearing." "That's a good name." No, Wizette agreed. They walked across the soft grass toward the old castle beneath the twin moons. Unconsciously, August had slipped by and the first day of term was tomorrow. A month had gone quickly. Wizette spent the time preparing for school and reorganizing his room. Luna did most of the decorating. Indeed, she insisted on doing it. She replaced the bedding and wallpaper and strung dirigible plums into a canopy over the bed. Dirigible plums, little radish-shaped magical fruits, were said to help one accept peculiar things. They were everywhere in the castle. Luna's earrings were made of them, too. Xenophilius, as editor of the Quibbler, worked in a room covered with dirigible plums to keep inspiration flowing. The castle's second floor buzzed. It was printing time for the Quibbler. The magical press clattered from dawn to dusk. Wizarding presses were peculiar, mostly wooden but reinforced with iron at key points, like machines from the Industrial Revolution. Enhanced by magic, each press folded, bound, and cut in one go. Xenophilius only had to design the pieces and drop them into the press. It spit out finished magazines. It was slow work, fewer than 100 copies in a few days, but steady. Wizette copied the textbooks he would need for the year. As the saying goes, a good pen can make up for a poor memory. The act of copying gave him a solid feel for the curriculum. Luna supplied all the illustrations. She was an exceptional artist. Whatever he described, she could draw. Her depictions of magical creatures were especially vivid. "Mom and I used to read Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them together," Luna said, smiling. "I've seen all the beasts in it, except the crumple-horned snorkack." Wizette asked, "Crumple-horned snorkack? I'll look for books at Flourish and Blots." "It'll be hard to find," Luna said regretfully. "It's a very rare creature." "My father said they live in Sweden. Maybe I'll go and find them myself and draw them," Wizette said, committing it to memory. On the last night of August, Xenophilius didn't cook. He ordered from a nearby Muggle restaurant and laid out a small feast. "Remember to write often," he told Wizette. "Share school things with us, however you like. You know what I mean." "I will." Wizette grinned and tossed 2 steaks out the window for the waiting owls. The 2 birds streaked like flashes of lightning, caught the steaks, and answered with triumphant hoots. On the first morning, Wizette double-checked his acceptance letter and inspected his suitcase twice before finally feeling ready. He carried his trunk downstairs. In the living room, sunlight poured through the windows and gilded Luna's pale hair as she preened Thor's feathers, smoothing each one with careful fingers. "I'm off to school," he said softly. Luna replied, a little dreamy. "Goodbyes are always a bit sad, but every parting is just preparation for the next reunion." She handed him a bright green gadigeon. "If you meet trouble or feel confused, this will bring you luck. Inside is the taste of home." It was true, the gadigeon tasted like scallions, and only Luna's family made it into a tea. "It really does taste like home," Wizette said, touched. The gift was so unmistakably Luna. 18. King's Cross Station and Ancient Magic. Improved King's Cross Station sat in central London, a major transport hub for England. It was still early, so the crowds were thin. Wizette made his way into the station, and after a few questions, found the route to Platform 9. The closer he got, the more odd groups he saw. They looked like parents seeing off their children, but their clothing was bizarre. Some outfits resembled circus costumes. Others combined huge padded jackets with shorts. A bald, bearded, middle-aged man was wearing a floral maxi dress. Despite the strange attire, their actions were the same. They walked up to the column between platforms 9 and 10, ran straight into it, and disappeared. A suited man noticed, hurried over puzzled, and reached out as if to touch the pillar. Suddenly, a burly man in a pleated skirt appeared, raised his wand, muttered an incantation. A flash of light, and the suited man suddenly looked panicked and sprinted out of the station at top speed. Wizette wiped his brow, not sure where to begin complaining. Everything was too strange. A pleasant female voice sounded at his ear. "Muggle studies should be compulsory for every year, not just an elective." She was an Asian girl with delicate features, shoulder-length black hair, and a few freckles across her small nose. She wore a sky blue hoodie with two dark blue T's on the chest, held a suitcase in one hand and an old-fashioned broomstick in the other. The broom was immaculate, varnished and polished as if never used for sweeping. "You're Vizette, right? You look familiar. I remember seeing you on the front page of the Daily Prophet last month." She smiled. "I'm Cho Chang. I'm in Ravenclaw." "Hello, Cho Chang," Vizette replied. "Hello." Cho smiled. "We should go. Just walk straight into it. The ministry staff only deal with muggles." Vizette pointed at the burly man. "The ministry staff actually dress like that?" "Right? Hard to understand," Cho said with an exasperated grin. "That's why I think Muggle studies should be compulsory and the curriculum needs updating. What if I wear a Tutchill Tornadoes jersey and carry a broom? They wouldn't notice me. Muggles are much more tolerant now." Can you believe it? It's 1991, and the Muggle section in Muggle studies is still stuck 300 years behind. It's unbelievable. Cho quickened her pace and stepped straight into the pillar. Vizette followed. After a moment of blackness, a bright platform opened before him. Behind them was no longer the station concourse, but a wrought iron arch with a sign reading Platform 9 3/4. A dark red steam locomotive steamed in, richly Victorian. In truth, the engine had been repurposed by the Ministry of Magic. At the time, Minister Ottiline Gamble had gone against opposition and launched a massive project to safely transport Hogwarts students using 167 memory charms and unprecedented concealment magic. The platform itself was hidden, and the train had been altered from steam to magic power and named the Hogwarts Express. The platform was noisy, white magical steam curling overhead, pets scurrying between people's feet. Parents leaned on the train windows, giving last-minute instructions while children nodded like little chicks. Vizette activated Magic Eye. Ancient magic power swelled here. Silver blue energy nearly overflowed the platform. His mind stirred, and in his head, the practical guide to wizarding duels flipped to a page he hadn't reached before. Ancient Magic Improvement Beginner. It explained guiding ancient magic power to improve spells, enhancing power and adding special effects. Improved magic, the guide said, was distinct from shield magic. It couldn't be used alone and had to be combined with other spells. Its practical effects included boosting a spell's power and granting additional effects. Before school started, besides packing, Vizette had been studying the Duel Guide to learn how to use ancient magic power. In his previous life, the notebook's entries were like special skills or SP abilities. From the initial shield magic to the magic eye he'd obtained in Diagon Alley, these differed from ordinary wizard magic. The presence of improved magic confirmed his suspicions. The notebook described two kinds of ancient magic power, one that came from an Obscurus and could be cast directly, and another, more unusual kind, that originated in ancient magical buildings. Over time, these structures imbued themselves with ancient magic power that could be absorbed to grow Magic Eye or unlock new pages in the notebook. "It's pretty shocking, isn't it?" Cho said. "When I first came through, I was stunned. Things like this you'd only expect to see in museums." The first few carriages were already full. Some students played in the corridor, some did homework using their school bags as cushions, others chatted idly. "Why'd you bring a toad? Is that in fashion now?" one asked. "His name is Trevor. He's a toad. My great-uncle bought him for me. He was so pleased I had magical talent." "Are you sure he was pleased? Or something else? Does anyone still keep a toad as a pet?" Cho, chatty as ever, led Vizette toward the middle of the train, where an empty compartment awaited. They lifted their trunks onto the rack. "Anyone still doing homework at this hour is almost certainly a Gryffindor," she said. "How can you tell?" Vizette asked. He didn't know much about Hogwarts beyond the snatches from Hogwarts, a history he'd had no time to read properly. Cho took a rag and wiped down her polished broom. "From what I've heard, Gryffindors cram their summers full. They plan to explore wizarding ruins or play Quidditch all day. Homework comes last." Vizette laughed. "Finish the homework or get 8 hours sleep, one of the two, on the night before school starts," Cho giggled. "Exactly." A young black boy poked his head into the compartment, thrusting out a shirt pocket. "Mate, can I copy your homework? I've got some bag spiders from Africa. You can keep one as a pet." In the original work, Cho Chang is described as a beautiful Asian girl. 19. Homework has no importance in Gryffindors. Cho Chang raised her hand and announced, "This is Lee Jordan, a third-year Gryffindor and a well-known Quidditch commentator." "I'm not that famous," Lee Jordan said as he stepped into the compartment. "Have you done Professor Flitwick's homework?" "I only realized when I got home yesterday that I left my newly bought textbook in Africa," Cho said, "and it won't arrive until tomorrow. But I haven't written a single word of the preview test Professor Flitwick set." Cho's lips curved in a half-smile, an expression that seemed to say, "See? Gryffindors don't take homework seriously." She hastened to add, "You should ask someone else. I'm only a second year, and Vizette is a first year." "Cho Chang, I know you," Lee teased. "In that match last year, Cedric couldn't catch the golden snitch. He kept getting distracted looking at you." Cho choked on a laugh, her cheeks coloring. "You're mistaken. I'm a Ravenclaw, not." Lee shot a mock indignant look. "As a commentator, it's my duty to capture the most exciting moments of a match." "You were wearing a Tatchill Tornadoes uniform then," he went on. "I remember it clearly. I could swear on a bag of spiders." Cho interrupted quickly. "Really, you should ask someone else. We can't help you." "Can I stay here for a while?" Lee sighed. "When Fred and George get on the train, I'll see if they brought their textbooks." "Suit yourself," Cho said. Vizette, still new and curious, asked, Fred Weasley?" Lee's face lit up. "Yes, Fred and George are twins, my best mates. You know them?" Vizette nodded. "The Weasleys helped me before, so in a way, yes." "Ah, acquaintances then." Lee relaxed and began to complain. "I really don't want to spend all my time on homework. This bag of spider venom is brilliant." "What?" Cho blinked. "When I was in Africa, I experimented with these spiders," Lee explained. "If your tongue even brushes a bit of venom, it swells right up. If Fred and George were here, we could test it together. If it weren't for this awful homework." He grumbled that he'd asked so many people but couldn't borrow any homework to copy. "Borrow homework to copy?" Vizette glanced at the bag poking out of Lee's pocket. "And your offer to them is, let them touch the spiders?" "Of course." Lee nodded eagerly. "This isn't an ordinary bag of spiders. The venom's magical. It's rare, like a wizard among muggles." Vizette finally understood why no one lent Lee their homework. The spider thing was unnerving. Lee was talkative and restless, and once he learned Vizette knew the Weasleys, he warmed up and began boasting about each house. "Gryffindor is the best house, of course. Even Dumbledore was a Gryffindor. Everything there is the best. Ravenclaw's good too. If Cho were in my year, Ravenclaw essays would be the most accurate." "Hufflepuffs are all friendly. That heartthrob Cedric, they eat the most. Where do they get it from?" "Slytherin? It produces dark wizards. The worst. You know who was a Slytherin. They'll stop at nothing for the House Cup, and their head is a points-deducting maniac." You know who. Vizette felt the name was familiar. He remembered hearing other nicknames. The Noseless Monster, Two-Holed Socket, and then the truth clicked. This was one of Lord Voldemort's aliases. "That name wasn't a joke back then," Lee said, swallowing. "He was the most dangerous dark wizard in history. My dad told me those killed by you-know-who could make an army of Inferi. We don't even say his name. We use a euphemism." "That's serious," Vizette frowned. "I only knew of Grindelwald. He seemed dangerous, too. I saw him in a movie. He took on Makusa Aurors all by himself." "That's an older story." Lee shrugged. Dumbledore defeated Grindelwald. Joining Gryffindor was clearly the right choice. Cho, having finished cleaning her broom, suggested, "If you're interested in Grindelwald and you-know-who, modern magic history has more details." By 10:30, a thirsty Lee Jordan had settled down to try and finish the homework. Repairing charm. The spell starts with R. Repair. What's the inventor's name? English, wasn't it? I think I saw it somewhere. Cho buried her head in Quidditch Through the Ages and made muffled noises. Vizette, meanwhile, had the books he'd seen cataloged in his mind. He had memorized a number of volumes, including the Standard Book of Spells, Grade 3. If he focused, he could find the relevant passage almost instantly, like a computer searching keywords. He skimmed the memory and recited, according to the book, the repairing charm is reparo. If you need the full description, it says, a charm used to mending most broken objects seamlessly. Lee's eyes lit up like he'd found a lifeline. Is that sure? Is the book you left in Africa the Standard Book of Spells, Grade 3? Yes, it's the one. Then there's no mistake. When I bought it, I thought that chapter was interesting, so I remembered it. Remembered it? How? Lee gaped. Vizette shrugged. When you read the question, I just pictured the passage. If you're not sure, check with Fred and George when they arrive. I'll try it myself first. Lee pulled a tissue from his pocket, tore it into pieces, and muttered the incantation. Reparo. He practiced the spell against the torn tissue. After about 10 tries, the pieces held together. Not perfect, but not falling apart either. The result proved the charm and pronunciation were right. Magic takes practice. Genius! My good brother, you're a genius, Lee crowed, tossing the preview paper to Vizette. Help me with the rest. The test paper was full of blanks. If someone had actually prepared, the questions weren't that hard. Vizette pointed to one of the empty lines and said, in 1754, Arabella Nutley, of the British Ministry of Magic's Office for the Improper Use of Magic, restored the Roman Colosseum after it was accidentally destroyed. You're brilliant. Lee Jordan gave a thumbs up and immediately began scribbling, filling in the answers. Patronus charm, expecto patronum, explanation, an ancient and mysterious spell that summons a protective patronus. One by one, the blanks were filled. Cho Chang, who had been smiling to herself before, now looked at Vizette with genuine surprise. A loud whistle blew. The Hogwarts Express was finally underway. Outside the windows, parents waved, and smaller children trailed after the train, crying. As the express picked up speed, the children on board, freed of their parents' supervision, sighed with relief and pulled their wands from their pockets. Laughter and chatter filled the compartments. Having finished his homework, Lee was full of energy again. I'm telling you, I met wizards in Africa and even learned magic that doesn't need a wand. Wandless casting? Cho's interest was piqued. I've read about it. Africa's supposed to be very good at that. Lee waved a hand. Not just wandless casting, I mean magic done with gestures. I'll show you. He rolled up his sleeves and went through a series of flashy movements, clapping his hands loudly. Nothing happened. No sparks, no lights, nothing. Cho murmured, cautious. Are you sure it's magic? What kind of magic is that? Should I try again? Lee scratched his head, rolled his sleeves up higher, and clapped dramatically. Merlin's saggy trousers. Were you controlled by an African wizard? He called in an exaggerated voice. Fred shoved in beside him, hands on Lee's shoulders, jostling him. Don't tell me it's happened to you. We're still waiting for your fanged Frazier. Hey, Vizette, you're here too. George arrived right behind, waving. Oh, and the girl who distracted Cedric. Cho gave a small nod, cheeks flushing faintly. Of course nothing happened to me, Lee protested, shrugging off Fred's hands. Be careful, you might have crushed the fanged Frazier. We'd regret that forever, George mimed, praying. Hurry up and get it out. All 5 of them turned their attention to the small, furry creature. Cho watched warily, afraid it might leap at her. Fred, George, and Lee admired the dense bristles along its body. Vizette cast Magic Eye and scanned the fanged Frazier like an X-ray, moving it slowly back and forth. Apart from a faint green glow in the fangs and the venom glands, the creature looked dull gray. Inside that green light, there seemed to be a symbol, but it was too blurred to make out clearly. Suddenly, a hand moved toward the fangs. The fanged Frazier didn't hesitate. It bit and injected its magical venom. As the venom poured in, the green glow dimmed. The bitten hand belonged to Fred. The wound swelled quickly. He grimaced. Cho's eyes widened, and she drew her wand. Why did you put your hand there yourself? Don't worry, it's nothing serious. George was calm. He pulled a suction cup device from his pocket and stuck it over the bite. The contraption gurgled to life. The venom was sucked out, funneled into a small glass vial at the top. Fred's swollen hand deflated back to normal, leaving 2 rice grain-sized puncture marks. Lee wasn't idle either. He took out a green leaf, chewed it roughly, and spat the pulp onto the wounds. A few wisps of green smoke curled up. When he pushed the leaf aside, the skin was healed, slightly smoother than the surrounding area. Fred let out a long breath and made a face. That fanged Frazier really hurts. But we've got it, George said, unscrewing the little vial and shaking the collected green venom. Puking pastilles, here we come. Fred smiled despite himself. But remember, next time it's your turn to get bitten. Vizette dispelled his magic eye and asked, curious, Excuse me, was that Dirk Cresswell? An expert. Lee crowed proudly, slinging an arm around Wizet's shoulders. He dug into his bag and produced a handful of green leaves. I got these in Africa. The whole bag was free. No wonder it healed so fast. It must be one of those rare herbs, Fred said, impressed. I wonder how long until we can earn enough to take our families on a proper holiday. Soon, I'm sure, George said, then looked at Wizette with a new light in his eye. I didn't expect you to recognize Dirk Cresswell at a glance. Lee puffed up with pride. When I was waiting for you earlier, guess how I finished my homework? Fred shrugged. He must have guessed. It's Flitwick's homework, not McGonagall's. Not exactly the hardest. Ahem, Cho coughed twice, reminding them that at least one Ravenclaw in the compartment was listening. I'm not as irresponsible as Fred, Lee said with a chuckle. With Wizet's help, I got through the practice test. George stroked his chin. How is that different from just guessing? Why don't we compare papers? Lee suggested. I trust him, and trust doesn't need a reason. Fred and George were men of action. They pulled out their practice tests and checked every answer. At the end of the comparison, George still looked unconvinced, so he grabbed a standard book of spells, grade 3, and checked the corresponding entries. Merlin's receding hairline. How is it all correct? In some places I was careless. I even misspelled things. See? Lee said proudly. If I hadn't cast the healing spell myself, I wouldn't have believed it either. He's only a first year, and he's memorized standard book of spells, grade 3, just like that? George said, amazed. Fred's expression turned serious. He patted Wizet's shoulder. Interested in coming to Gryffindor? We need people like you.